Hello and welcome to our walkthrough of installing Django on Python Anywhere. So we're using Python Anywhere. You can do this if you really want on your own computer, but Python Anywhere is just so easy to use, and you can use this even if you have like an iPad or something, or you're working in a public library. So I really like it. There'll be other instructions on how to use something other than Python Anywhere, but it's my preference. So Python Anywhere is a Python environment that allows us to do sort of limited hosting of Python web applications. So it's really quite cool. So I'm going to go through the installation process that we're going to use in the Mozilla Developers Network, MDN, Mozilla, not Microsoft. And so this is the instructions, but these are the instructions to run it on your own computer. And so we're going to have our own version of these instructions. There's also another document that you can kind of look at that was used as the basis for this document, but it's a different tutorial. It's the official Django tutorial, but I'm using the Mozilla Developer Network tutorial. So those are things to look at. So here I am logged into Python Anywhere. I really like Python Anywhere because it teaches us a bit of how to use Linux. It teaches us a whole series of things. So what we're going to do to start is going to do some installations in our Bash console. So Bash is like it's the Linux command line interpreter. It's like Macintosh terminal. It's like Windows command line, except it's really Linux. And I think it's important for us to learn Linux commands because most of the servers that you're going to ever run are going to be Linux. It's great to do development on your laptop, but these are servers. It also lets you do this entire course on something like a library computer or on iPad. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a virtual environment. And a virtual environment is a way to install a whole version of Python and supporting modules in an isolated little area so that you know what version of Python you're running, what version, whether Django's installed, what version of Django. Each virtual environment can have a different set of tools in it. And so you can do this on your laptop, and we're going to do it here in Python Anywhere just to kind of keep things clean. Now the fact Django 2 is just the name that we've named this, and so now that we're in it, if you stop this and come back, you're going to run this command work on Django 2, and that's a way to switch into a particular virtual environment. And I'll just type it here. It's actually redundant this first time I go through, but now I'm in the environment, and so I can do like Python 3 minus version. And so I see that I'm in Python 33.6 that was installed in my virtual environment. So let's go ahead, and now pip is the tool that adds modules to our Python environment. And what's cool is with multiple virtual environments, we could do this, and now we're going to have a particular version of Python, a particular version of Django, and other tools that we may need. Now this particular one might take a little while because it downloads a whole bunch of files. So we'll pause for a second while we watch all this download. Okay, so now we've installed Django. Let's run a command just to make sure that we know which Django we've got. This actually should be Python 3. So we've got version 2.14, okay? And so now we're going to, again, if we weren't, we already talked about that. So I'm going to go into here, going to go into my home directory, which I've already got, cd tilde, and then make dir Django projects. Go into that directory, Django. So I'm going to type DJ tab, and you'll notice that does tab auto completion as long as that's unique. So that's nice. And then we're going to create our first Django project. And this is just going to create a bunch of files. Right now there's no files here. I'm going to start a new project. And so there are projects, and each project has applications. And we're going to have multiple projects in this folder called Django projects. That's why it's named there. If you take a look, we now have a folder. And we take a look at what's in that folder. My test site, there's a number of files in there, including another folder called my test site. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to make some changes in the web tab. And so we're going to go over here and I'm going to open this in a new window. Control link, open in a new window. And then I'm going to go into my web tab. This is the web tab. And I've kind of got something going here. So you're supposed to change this to be Django projects my test site, Django projects my test site. I've already got it set because I did this before. And so then you've got to edit the WSGI configuration file, and I just give you the whole thing, website, and this should be right. Yeah, no, it's not, because I did something else. This should be my test site and my test site. So every time we run a different application or a different project, we got to save this. So I'm going to save that. So that's what it tells you to have it be like this. And then we're going to have to edit this file, Django projects my test site settings.py. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. So let's go back to Python Anywhere, and there is a way to browse your files. And so here's Django, the folder Django projects, my test site, settings.py was the file. Now this is the easiest way to do it, okay? This is the easiest way to do it. And so you edit it in the browser, and you add quote, asterisk, quote, and then we've got to add a new line right here. Actually, no, we're good. That's it. We just have to change that, and then we save this. So that's what we've changed. Now, if you want, I'll close this or go back to my main dashboard. There are other ways to do this. So if we're in the console, is my console here? No, it's not. Console's not there. Open, go back to the console. So I had a console. I'm going to go back to the console. I'm going to open it in a new tab. Wish these guys open these in new tabs automatically for us. So there we are, ls_myl, my test site. Now, there's a couple ways you could do this. And so you only have to do this one of three ways. So this one I just did. How to edit the file, go find it, edit that file, make the changes. You could also go into that folder in the console. So now I see these files, ls-l shows me the files with details, and I can edit this file, settings.py, with a couple of different editors. Nano is probably the easiest editor that you can use, but eventually I'd like you to start learning how to edit things in command line. And so you don't have to do this. Now I'm cursoring down, and here's allowed hosts, and I could make the change. The change has already been done because I edited it. So I would just insert this, and then I type Control X, which is right there, exit, Control X, and then the letter yes, UI for yes, and then I hit enter, and that's another way to edit that. So another way to edit this file is with my favorite editor, VI or Vim. So I'll do VI settings.py. Now, don't do this. Don't do this right away unless you know how to do this or you have someone to help you. So I can cursor down and find my way here. And VI is a weird editor in that it has modes. I'm going to delete 3 characters with hitting the X key, X, X, X. And then I'm going to insert mode. It says insert mode, quote, asterisk, quote, escape. Oops. Looks good. Colon, WQ, enter. So don't try that. Right, don't try that unless I'll maybe record a video on how to use VI. You'll see me using VI, but as you do this, you got 3 ways to edit files from the easiest to the coolest. Okay, so all I needed to do ultimately was add this little asterisk to allowed host, and I showed you 3 ways to do that. Okay, so then we've edited that, we've set this up, and now. Okay, so I think at this point it is time, where are we? Let's go to the web tab. At this time, we've got these set, we've got this set properly, show you that again. Okay, my test site, make sure it says my test site. And that just comes right from there. So then what you do is you reload it. So now that reload is completed, you should be able to just open this up, open link in new tab, and you should see the happy little welcome to Django, which means you've set it up. We haven't done anything, we haven't built any apps, but we have made it all the way through to your starting of Python. Your first Django install is now successful, okay? Hello and welcome to a supplementary demonstration to tell you something about what happens when you see this message when you go to your website. So let's just say you're running your installation and you're cruising along and away this happened. So I'm working on the install, so it's not too much, but basically there's a number of things that you might have done wrong, and we'll do a couple of things wrong, but I've got it set up with one thing that's wrong. So most often you take a look at your web app page. We'll open that in a new tab. And it's like if you've done a bunch of stuff and you reloaded your thing and now it's blowing up, okay? And so the first place to look if things go wrong, and it tells you this right here, is this error log or the server log. If you're having trouble starting up, I always start with the error log, open link in new tab. Now, I've been doing this for a while, and this is showing me all kinds of errors that I've had for the last over a month now that I've been playing with this. And they do rotate the logs, but the logs stick around a long time. So you got to always go to the very, very bottom, right? So here we go. Go to the very, very bottom, and you got to look at the timestamps here. So this happened here. And these are tracebacks, and these tracebacks are telling what function is calling what function, which is method, which is calling what method, and those don't often help you because they're code that you didn't write. So you kind of got to get used to this and look at the right thing. And so this is having error running WSGI. WSGI it's web applications in Python, basically. Module not found error, no module named XY test site. And so hopefully you recognize this. This could be like a syntax error. I'll introduce a syntax error, but I'll show you in this case, this here WSGI configuration file. This is like the starting point of everything. And if this isn't right, so I introduced an error, and I made this error and this error. So my test site, that's what these are supposed to be. So I made a mistake on purpose. So now I'm going to save these. And anytime you change any of these configurations, you've got to go back to your web app page. There's a link right there to the web app setup. You got to go back to the web app setup, and you have to hit reload, and then you've got to wait. Now, if something blows up here and it doesn't really want to reload well, in this case it reloaded just fine, that's what this server log is. The server log is kind of getting it basically started. And so that we got no errors on the server log. Go to the bottom, it doesn't say anything. And this is very talkative, but there's no errors here, right? And so don't worry about that. The error log was the one that we had this. And so look at this, see this date, 1458 on January 6th. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to here, and I'm going to hit refresh, and let's hope this time it worked. And so we're not going to see an error because there was no error. So we got no more errors, and so it worked, okay? And so that's the idea. And what's really cool is that error page tells you to go to these error logs. So the error log, like I said, is the most useful one, but be real careful in that there's a lot of it that doesn't really apply to you. And you gotta sort of note the dates of it, and so you'll see stuff where you made a mistake. So when I first started this, I forgot to put in allowed hosts, and so that's a bug. So let's look at some of these things. This was again this file MDN, that one right there. The name of that file, if you look here, is the same name as this file. That's that file that I edited, and so we'll just go through some of these. So. But this stuff here, probably that's not my stuff, right? That's in my virtual environment, that's Django itself, Python and Django itself. The same kind of error. It's telling me again where that's at. Forgot to do allowed hosts again on that particular one. This one here. Let's see what's mad about that. What this one was. Internal server error slash. Oh. This is a later one. No module name catalog URLs. That's a later assignment. No module name catalog URLs. Error running my whiskey application. Oh, this one here, this was indentation error. That's I was making a change to code. These are later ones. So you just get used to this. Again, indentation error. I finally fixed that. So every time you fix it, remember you got to go back and reload it, right? So when you change these things, you want to reload it so it runs it. So again, so let's make some more errors here. Let's get to my error. Go to the bottom. Again, let's make an error. Let's go here. Oh, come on, give me a... Okay, I just need to get it to a console. Okay, CD Django projects, CD my test site. So if we take a look at the files that we were making changes to in this one, nano, let's go undo one of the changes. Nano my test site / settings, I think that's the file. So remember how we had to put this allowed hosts in? Let's take it out. So I'm going to Control X, enter, yes, boom. And now, because I changed this, I'm going to have to do a reload, right? And again, I'm trying to make a mistake. So I'm going to hit refresh again. Boom. So this is kind of nice because it does tell us what's going on. You see sort of where it's complaining. You need to add, may need blah, 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 valid host header. Now, if at the same time, it's not telling us about the errors. If you go in here and now you look at the errors, and I hit refresh on this, you will see now that I now, at this time, have invalid host header. So you got to always look at the bottom because, again, it could be a ton of stuff. So then if I go back into my bash console and I go down and I fix that, oops, 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 oops. I'm in the wrong text editor. No. I was typing the wrong stuff. Go in here and fix this to back the way it's supposed to be. Control X, yes, enter. And now I'm going to hit, so this is what we was blowing up with. And now I'm going to hit reload again. So you kind of have to restart this when you make sort of low-level configuration changes. So now I should be able to hit refresh, and I see the happy little Django rocket ship. So that's basically just gets you through some of the stuff that you might run across as you are making mistakes. You check the error file, check these things, or get some help, right? Other people can look at this, but usually you can figure it out pretty effectively by knowing and going to the bottom of that error file. Okay? Cheers. Hello and welcome to our demonstration of how to move your code into GitHub. This is optional. You don't really have to do this unless you've been assigned to do it. And please don't put your stuff into a public repository because you really don't want to share all your solutions with every other student on the planet. But if you have a private repository capability on GitHub, perhaps you got it through GitHub for Education, then go ahead and this is how you do it. Okay? So, of course, GitHub is a great place to store everything. I store the website for this class even in there. So this is my GitHub. And so I'm going to create a new repository. I'm going to call it Django Projects. New repository. Django. Oops. Django projects. And my Mozilla Developer Network Django projects. So these, we've already, if you've been doing this in order, you already have something in the folders. So you don't want to fill this with anything. So don't check this, don't check this, don't check this. Leave this all alone. You can add a git. We will actually add a git ignore manually in a second. And then we're going to create this repository. Now, when you create an empty repository and you haven't put anything in, it tells you how to fill it up, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to copy this. Well, I'll have this later. So remember this. Okay, so we've got that repository. Now we're going to go into Python Anywhere, and I assume that if you go into your console, and if you've got stuff in there just from before, you just type clear. I'll say CD to go into my home directory. Take a look, pwd, I'm in my home directory. Okay, so if you do an ls, you will see that there is Django.projects, which is something we created in the previous assignment. Okay, so first we're going to create a git ignore file. So I'll cd into Django projects, and then I'm going to use nano to edit the file git ignore. Now the dot is a file that you're not going to see when you do ls. We'll show this to you in a second. Just put these 3 lines in. Zoop. Put those in, and then Control X, and then yes, and then save it. So if I do an ls, I don't see it. If I do an ls -a, I do see it. So -a shows you the files that start with dot, which are the hidden files. Okay, so I've created this file. I can type cat.gitignore. Cat is shows you the contents of a file. So it has 3 lines. There are text lines. Okay, so now this is my site that I created. I'm in the Django projects, and now I'm going to follow the slightly altered versions of the instructions from GitHub. So these are the instructions, but I've got them kind of tweaked a little bit. We're going to set the push strategy. So, git add star. So now we've created a local GitHub repository. We're going to add these files. It doesn't find the .ignore file, so you got to add that one explicitly. Git add ignore. Git status is always fun to type. It tells you what Git thinks is about to be done, where changes to be committed. They're not there yet. Now, in order for it to stop asking you so many things, we're going to tell it what our email address is and what our name is. I like using my middle initial because as the internet goes, more and more people have the same first and last name. And then when we start pushing stuff up here, it's going to keep asking for our account and our password. And this cache idea here is going to make it so we don't get asked that quite so often. And this way, I think it's like 10 days or so. So that's credential helper. So I'm just going through all these things. So GitHub -m. So this is a message. Commit is preparing to actually send the data. It doesn't actually send the data. -m is a commit message. So it's our first commit. That's traditional. And if you type git status now, you will see that we're committed, but it's not yet pushed to master. Okay, it's not yet pushed. So now you have to say git remote add origin. You got to add this, but this really needs to be you, not me. csev. Now that turns out to be the exact URL that's right here. GitHub.com, Django projects git. I got that right? Django project. This is not actually sending it, but this is telling it where to send it. Okay, so now it knows where to send it, and we're just about ready to send it. Git push u origin master. Okay, so now it needs to know your GitHub account. So I got to go get my password off a different screen so you don't see it. So now I got my password right and it's all sent. And so at this point I can go back here And actually I can just hit refresh because I'm in that Django projects thing. So let's hit refresh. And son of a gun, here's all my GitHub stuff. And that's all good. I went and I checked, and so it's all there. And I can type git status, not that it's going to tell me anything particularly great, but we're on good shape. We got a remote. Another command you might type is git remote minus v, remote minus v, that tells you where you're going to be pushing and pulling. We're mostly going to do our editing here on Python Anywhere and then pushing, and we'll, in future assignments, I will tell you if you are choosing to store your stuff in Git, giving you some commands. So that basically gets your code into GitHub so that you can track the changes as you make changes as it continues. Welcome to the next step of our Mozilla Development Network tutorial. Now we're going to switch from that first site that sort of made sure we were installed properly and start developing a real site. But we're not going to put any content in it. We're just going to sort of set things up. So let's go ahead and get a Python Anywhere shell going here. Start a bash shell. Now I'm going to say, here she comes, work on Django 2, because I started a new shell. This to make sure I'm in my right virtual environment, basically. And so then what we're going to do is I'm going to go into that folder, the Django projects folder. I'll do an ls, and I have a subfolder named test site. If I do an ls minus la, you'll see that I have a GitHub repo and my gitignore file. And these three suffixes are what I want to ignore as I create files. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start a new project. So remember, their projects are big things. That's why I call this folder Django projects. And so now I have local library, and I'm going to go into local library, and then I'm going to start an application called the library catalog. So I have this, it's weird because I'm in local library as the project, but there's sort of the global settings for it are in local library, and then each app, there'd be multiple apps. This is sort of like the settings for the global library. So at this point, I've got a bunch of new files, and I can take a look. If I've been doing Git of course is optional, but I've been doing Git with this. So I'm going to do get status, and this basically means the entire current folder is new to Git. Git hasn't seen it. We created all the folders in local library. So we can say git add. We're going to put these in so we can track our changes. Git add dot, and let's go ahead and say git status to make sure I got that right. So all these files are about to be put into GitHub. And git commit minus a, let's add a message here. Skeleton starting. So there you are. And then we are going to push them. My GitHub account is csev. I'll go over here and get my password. And now it's been pushed up. So I take a look in my Git repo, and I can see that this new local library, and I can see the commits. I actually had one extra commit here. So this local library was this new stuff. That's all the files that I just created. Now we're going to make some changes here, right? And so I wanted to change it so I can use GitHub sort of to help myself track what I'm changing. And this is a nice thing about GitHub. So if I do git status, we're all caught up. Everything's fine. So we got a couple of things that we've got to do. The local library settings py. I'll use nano here. We have to allow all URLs to the allowed hosts. This has to do with who can make requests to our application. And then we have to add a new line here because we just installed the application, this catalog application that we just installed. So we're going to have to add this line to sort of connect in. You'll see we'll do this a lot. And so then we made those two changes, and I'm going to Control X, yes, Control X, oh, and then enter. So that saves it. So I've made that. Now you can see get diff. This is cool with GitHub, and you can see what I did. I took out this line and replaced it with this one, and I did that. So this is a way for me to kind of verify that I made all my things. And so Git is tracking the changes. That's what it does. So now I'm going to edit this file local library URLs, and this basically routes various URLs. Ooh, I'll use VI for this one. So I'll go down to the bottom here, and I'll use the open command. That was the O. And then I'm going to paste these new things it tells me to put in. I've got to put this. There are two things accomplished here. We're going to have the catalog application, and we're doing URL, what's called URL routing in there. And then the slash is going to get redirected to /catalog, and you'll see that in a bit. I hit escape, hit :WQ. You probably want to use nano for this, but I just use VI. And so now I've accomplished this part, and I can do another get diff. And so you can see these are the changes I made here to set this file. And then you can see the changes that I made into the URLs file. So just added some lines at the end. That's what we did. Hit Q to get out of the get diff. The next thing we do is we edit a whole new file, catalogurls.py. This is a new file. Nano catalog urls.py. Boop. And we are just going to paste this bit. And now in the next steps, we're going to actually add some routing for the various URLs of our catalog application. But for now, we're just going to leave that alone. We're just going to put this in as a placeholder. And Control X, yes, write that file. If I do a get status, you can see I've changed two files and I've added one new file. Now, it may not be necessary to do these right now, but we might as well go ahead and get our empty database created. Make migrations, sort of scans through all the models, of which there are some built-ins, but we've not built any new ones, and then migrate creates a database. So that's creating a bunch of tables inside of our database, and this database is we're using SQLite, and so it lives in SQLite3. Now if I do a get status, you don't see, this is an additional file, but because it's in our gitignore, cat /.gitignore, remember that file? It says ignore files that end in swap, pycache, or start.sqlite3. So we made this file, but it's not going to get checked into GitHub. So so that's what the gitignore file is for, is to have those things that you don't put into GitHub. It's a way to say, please don't put, you force them in if you want. Okay, so let's continue on. So now we're going to go into the web tab of Python Anywhere. Open that in a new tab. Go into the Open Web tab. And so here we are in the Web tab. Now the source code working directory and WSGI configuration files were from our previous one. So we got to change these, and instead of saying my test site, we say local library. I like that one. And instead of my test site, we say local library. So we're switching from my test site to the local one. And this here is this WSGI configuration is the sort of the master router. And we can say we have to change local library twice. Oops. Local library and local library. And then I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to the web tab. So let's just kind of verify that these all look pretty good. We're still using the same virtual environment. We didn't change that. That's just our Django, basic Django installation. This is where our Django application file. So this looks pretty good. So then we're going to reload it, see how long it takes. So now, if all goes well, we should be able to open this in a new tab. Yep, so it's trying to find this. It redirected us. There was a thing there that caused this redirect to happen. This little guy right there meant that we went to slash. If we go to slash without catalog, it's going to redirect us to slash catalog. But then because of the fact that there's nothing here in catalog urls.py, we sort of don't have anything. So it's okay. So this isn't a very functional application, but this is the application that you have at the end of the first skeleton. So we're in pretty good shape. We've done this, we've hit reload, we went to it. There, we're in good shape. So now we've got these GitHub. Let's go back into our bash console. So I'm going to go up one folder. This is Django projects, and we do a get status here, and we see that we've made the change, local library settings file, and we've added this. So I'm going to say git add this file. Get status. And so I'm going to do another commit, git commit -m -a -m after skeleton. And I'm going to say git push to upload it, and away we go. So that, if we now go look at our Django projects, we've got 4 commits, and we can see that from the time we started the skeleton to the end of the skeleton, we can see the files that were changed. That's kind of nice. We added this file, we made this change, and then we appended this to the end of this local library. So this GitHub is great as a way to allow us to keep track of our stuff, and if we make mistakes, we're like, what did we do before? So it might not be as clean with only 4 commits. We might have to sort of futz around, but GitHub is really, really quite useful. And the last thing that we might want to do is do what's called a tag. So each of these commits has its separate ID, but we can sort of tag a moment in time and give it a special name. And so I'm going to say git tag skeleton, and then I'm going to push that tag up, push origin -- tags. And that's going to shove the tag up into GitHub itself. And now if I go looking here, we're going to see that there's one release, and that release is at skeleton. So this is we'll have a bunch of these. There'll be sort of, there's moments in time. So I've tagged this one. Now, again, it's nothing different. We've just got 4 commits, right? It's this one here. But tagging allows us to see, to name moments in time, to make releases naming moments in time. And so we named this guy skeleton, and away you go. So up next, we're going to go on to the next, where we're going to actually put a little more interesting content into this website. Okay? Hello, welcome to a simple demonstration. Today we're going to go through one of the handouts of running some of the command line SQLite commands. And this is just a flat text file. It's kind of easy because you can sort of cut and paste everything, so it's not too bad. So here we are in my Python Anywhere. I'm going to start a bash console, and I'm going to do this whole thing. I've got my Django stuff here. Hang on, let me line this up a little better so you can see it. There we go. So here's my Django. I'm in my home directory. I'm going to remove, because I did this before, zip SQLite. And so we're just going to do this on a silly file. I'm not going to go into any of my Django projects or anything like that. I'm just going to make a file to use SQLite. So the command to start SQLite is a command line SQLite3 if it's installed on your system. And this is going to do all the database storage in a file named zip.sqlite3. So now we're in the command line. And you can look up, I've got some documentation on the different things. There are several kinds of command line. One is to show the output in column form for the select statement, so we'll turn that on. Now this is our first SQL statement. We're going to create a table with users. This ID long string, that assigns a unique increasing number to every row that we put in, and the name and email are just columns that have text. Okay. And so if we are successful, this is a continuation because we didn't put this semicolon, so it keeps on going. And so now we can ask .tables, and we see that we have a single table. We can ask what the shape of that, which is just going to echo and we can ask what shape that is. Now let's do some simple. So the insert statement in SQL, basically insert into, it's a keyword. Users is the name of a table in our database. Name, email are the column names, and then values, there's a one-to-one correspondence between like Chuck and name and c7@umich.edu and email. And so I have a number of different insert statements. SQL statements in this command line end with a semicolon. And so that added a row. We can take a look with this select statement at what we've got. So we see one row, it assigned it a key. That's the ID, that's the name, and that's the email. Now I can paste a bunch of these things in at the same time, save us a little bit of time. Zoom, zoom, hit enter, and I can up arrow to go back to the select star from users. So now we see these are the folks that were inserted. We got 6 rows. And then the delete statement, delete from. So SQL sometimes has what seems like redundant things in it's a bit more of a wordy language. It could say delete users, but it's like delete from users rolls better off the tongue. So this is a table, and then where is a part. You'll see where clauses on all kinds of SQL statements. And if you said delete from users, it would actually delete all the records. Maybe I'll do that right down here at the bottom. But I'm going to say I want to go in and delete the record where this is true. Now there might be more than one record. This currently happens to be only one record that has this. Better grab that semicolon. And so it's going to change that. So I'll delete one record. So that Ted is gone. 3, 4. Oh wait, no, we put Ted in twice and I got rid of both of them. I wonder if there was a mistake there. Yeah, I probably need to edit this file. Maybe when you look at this file, it won't be there. Oh, that's not, maybe I'll leave it there. That's pretty cool. Now here's another thing. So this deleted 2 users. If I run it again, it's not really an error. If I see there's nothing deleted, because I expressed a thing about SQL when I said delete all the records from users where this is true, and there were none for which it was true, that's just fine. I could say, where email equals that at blat.that, you'd think that might be an error, but it just, this never was true. This where was never true. So it looked through all the records that were in the table, and it was never true, so nothing got deleted. So that's the delete statement. Now the upper lowercase stuff, yeah, I'm just kind of, I like the uppercase. I like to put all my keywords in uppercase, and then tables. Sometimes I don't do upper lower, but I tend to use the keyword. So update says to update the table users. Set is we're going to make a change in there. Column name equals new value and a where clause. And again, if this where clause wasn't there, it would apply to all of them. So this is going to only set the name to Charles in one place. And now if I do a select, you see that this record here got changed there. So you can reach in with a where clause and update a single comment with an update statement. You can put a where clause on a select, so you only see a single row. So you only see that row. You can add to a select an order by a column, and that column could be in ascending order, ascending, going up, and then do the same thing, select star from users, order by name, descending. So that's going to go descending, Sally, Kristen, Colleen, Charles. Down they go. So that's it. Now, we can drop table users, and so this is basically the CRUD. Insert, CRUD is create, read, update, delete. Here it would be insert, select, update, delete. So, but CRUD is sort of kind of the classic concept. So we can drop this table users, but how about I do this? Let me show you. So let me show you this. What happens if I say update users set name equals Charles? Implied in each one of these SQL statements is it applies to all of them. So this, we got all these records. Update user set name equals Charles without a where clause. And then I say select star from users. Now you think, oh, that it did exactly what we told us. We didn't say where clause, right? You know, that means all the records are affected. So this update users sort of implies all of the records. Now this, if we say delete from users and then don't put a where clause there, you're going to see what happens. Delete from users, no where clause, implied all of the rows. And now I do a select and there is nothing. So that's why these where clauses are so important on like updates and deletes, just so that we know what rows they're supposed to apply to, because by default they apply to all rows. That's why you don't see loops in SQL, because every statement, like the update, the select, and the delete, they're kind of loops automatically, and you have to sort of shut them down with an if statement, as it were, which is that where clause. And the last thing we can get is we can just get rid of the table. That's another SQL statement. If we look at dot tables, we see we have one, and then we say drop table users, put a semicolon there, and then say dot tables, and there are no tables left. And then I say dot quit. And now I've got this file called zip.sqlite3, and I can get rid of it without hardening. This isn't a database that's running with a server or anything makes any difference. So I hope this is useful to you. This is a great way for you to sort of look around. We look for tables, we do selects, we figure out what's going on. We can sometimes debug our code by looking at our databases at a very low level. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Cheers. Hello and welcome to another walkthrough for Django for Everybody. In this we're going to take a look at Django models, which of course are the way that Django accesses and stores and retrieves data from databases, but we use this object model. And by now you probably have done at least one models.py. This is really a very simple sample bit of code. So here I am in a bash console, and I have already checked out the GitHub repo of DJ4E samples. This DJ4E samples, this is public. You can grab it. I'll refer to this a lot, and it will keep growing. As I came up with new things, I'll just throw them in here, and that way is a way for you to look at the code that I'm using to sort of explore stuff. So DJ4E samples, and I do an ls, and you see a whole series of samples. And so these are all Django projects, not Django applications. Each one is a project. And they covered various topics. The one we're going to work on here is the users one. So if I do an ls, you see that I've got sort of your standard users. It has my settings. The user model is going to have some user model folder is going to have the models.py, which is the main thing we're going to do here. Cat user model models.py. We're going to have one model. It's going to be named user. It extends models.model, and it has two character fields, name and email. And so the first thing we're going to do in here is we're going to do a make migrations. And that's really not going to find anything. Because if I go into user model migrations, coming out of GitHub, I had done a make migrations before I checked it into GitHub, and then I got this 001_initial.py file, which is the necessary Python commands to create the table. Now I need to do the migration to get the table, to get the actual database table created. So I do have to do. So when you're doing, when you've developed it, then checked it in, and then checked it back out, you only have to, I really should have known that I would only have to do Python 3 manage migrate, because that applies all the migrations. and puts them, there we go, it's creating tables. And in particular, it created this table right here. That was the one that it created from that migration. And so if I take a look, DB SQLite3, there we are, okay? And so in other demos, I've showed you how to look at that with the SQLite command, but that's not what we're going to do today. What we're going to do is talk to this database using the Django model. And it's not all that hard. So there is this thing called the Django shell. And Django shell is a great way for you to sort of type Python and Django commands together. Okay, and so at the shell prompt, I'm going to type this command so I'm typing Python here, and then I'm going to type this command. So user is a class, and we are going to construct an object with these parameters, and the name and the email came from the model, and these are the variables. So this is creating in memory a new user with these two values in it. Now if I typed that wrong, if this didn't match what was in the models.py, that would blow up, right? So I'll do that next. But then if I want to actually store it in the model, I have to say u.save parenthesis. That's calling a method on this object called save, and that actually saves it, and it stores it in the database with a key, a primary key, and we can find out what that key is, as not surprisingly, it gave us a 1. Okay, so let's do this one, and let me just make a mistake. I'm going to call it Zmail. And so this is, and it's like, no, you can't. So Zmail is not a valid parameter because it wasn't in the user model. So to get that right, I have to say email. And then u.save, I create an in-memory object, and then I flush it to the database with u.save. And so I can type in a few other ones here. Copy those real quick and blast them in. And so now I've got a whole series of data in the database. And if we were looking at this from SQLite, you could select and you could see all that stuff. But we don't have to do that because we can say this, user, which is the class, objects.values. So that objects is like implies all the objects in that user table, and then values actually retrieves them and prints them out. So if you look, it's a list here, it's a query set, and that's a list, and then each item in the list it's hard to see because of the way the highlighting works, has got an ID, which is the primary key, and then the two fields, name of Kristen, email of Kristen, name Chuck, email Chuck, CSEV, name Colleen, CVL, Ted, and Sally. And so you see that there are the 5 records that we just put in there. And so the user object's values retrieves them for us. We can also do things like filter and say, so by adding this little filter in here, we say, oh, I don't want all of them. I just want a query set that has the one where this is true, where that matches right there, where that CSEV at umich.edu matches. We can also delete a record once we've filtered it. In a sense, this part here is like the object, right? Filter, email, that is the object, and then we can do things to it. Values just prints them out. Delete actually deletes the record. So if I say, go find me the record with an email of ted@umich.edu, and then delete it. And then if I go up and print all the values, we have 4, and we're missing Ted. Ted was there before, Ted's not there. This delete actually did it. We're doing CRUD, create, read, update, delete. Actually, we're doing create, delete. We'll do update next. There's not much more to go here. I can go find the objects that match email of csef@umich.edu, and then I can update them and set their name column to be Charles. And now if I look at all the values, you can see the record part that said Chuck with email of csef@umich.edu has become Charles. So that's what that update put it in the database. So that update, and it's this has got to be a column. Name is an example of a column, and Charles is an example of the new value that's going to be in. So we're doing create, read, update, and delete. And we could also sort them with the order by function that we add to the end of it. So we can order by email ascending. So if you look carefully, you see A2, C7, CVL, KF. That's ascending email. Or if we want to do descending, I can order them with a minus name and do descending by name. So now you see the name Sally, Kristen, Colleen, and Charles. That is a descending name. And that's pretty much it. I can get out of here by a Control D or a .quit to get out and get back to the shell. Control D. Yes. .quit works in different versions of this shell. You'll see that some of these have double arrow, triple arrows. This has in and out. They're different shells and different systems, but it's the same thing. So there you go. I hope that gave you a little bit of an idea of the kinds of things that you can do with Django model capability when we're dealing with a single table. Cheers. Hello and welcome to another Django for Everybody walkthrough. This walkthrough is the 04 Model 1. This is a walkthrough where we're going to talk about one-to-many models. And this is a situation where you have two tables and there is a one-to-many or many-to-one relationship between them. And this is all in my Django for Everybody DJ for samples. You can track it's public, you can check it out. And it's in the tracks project. So I'm going to go into DJ4E samples, CD tracks. So here's so I've got tracks. I got the tracks model, cat tracks model, models.py. So this is a model. We went through this in the lecture where we built this model. There's an artist, an album, a genre. And most of these are kind of simple. These are kind of, this artist is no different than a, the artist is no different than a single table, but this album is related to, and this is where this foreign key comes in that says there's an artist field inside the album table that points to a particular artist in the artist model. Okay, so it's the artist that belongs to this album. On delete, set null. That basically means if an artist gets deleted, will the album get deleted? And null equals true means that we allow this to be empty. We allow there to be an album without an artist. That's what null equals true here. On delete means if we delete an artist, do we delete all their corresponding albums or leave them? And this says if an artist gets deleted, we're going to sort of clear out the artist in the album table. The genre table, again, just has a single field. And the track table has two foreign keys, the album foreign key. And what we're going to do here is if we delete, on delete cascade means if album gets deleted, we are going to delete all the tracks. And on delete equals set null for genre means if like a genre like rock and roll gets deleted, we're not necessarily going to delete the track. We'll just have a sort of an empty genre here. So that's what this on delete, it's the on delete of an album entry or a genre entry and how it affects the track entry that we've got. Okay? So we've got this put together here, and we're sitting in here, and we've got our model. We could say Python 3 manage.py make migrations, but since I checked this out of GitHub, the migrations are already in there. And then if I say Python 3 manage py migrate, it'll actually do a bunch of work and make us a database, including all of the tables that are part of the tracks model. So now if I have a DB SQLite3, and if we were to take a quick look at that, like SQLite3 db.sqlite, and we say what tables. We'd see there are all these tables: tracks, model, album, genre, and track. And if I say like schema, tracks model.track, you'll see that it's got some indexes, it's got these things, it's created a bunch of SQL that represents that model. So we'll get out of that for a bit, because we're not really here to do SQL. We're here to do the object relational mapping. So we're going to start the Django shell. And again, some of these Django shells have different user interfaces. Some of them have arrows. This one here has this little prompt. And so we're running Python basically. So we have to import our models. This tracks model.models, that is sort of in our Python, and the manage.py knows how to set the paths up. So we're in the tracks project, and we're getting to the tracks model application.models, and we're importing 4 models. Now these are classes that we're now going to start making some objects. And we start by working from the farthest out leaves of the tree and working inward. And we're going to store all these things in, I'll just grab all 3 of these. I think it'll paste pretty nice. Yeah. So this creates a new artist in memory with the name of Led Zeppelin. And then I'm going to have this in the variable Zep. And then I can send it to the database, save it, and say get the ID, which was the primary key that was assigned to this, as 1. Now later I'm going to use this variable because I'm connecting models to each other. So the next thing we're going to do is, and the names of these variables are just variables. Sometimes I use mnemonic ones, sometimes I use silly ones. I made an artist called ABC for ACDC, but the variable is ABC. Be careful, this is just a variable in Python that we're using. This ACDC is data we put into the, if we do abc.id, oops, we get a 2. Okay, so if we say, well, how many artists, what's in the artist table? This at this point is just a single table thing, and we can sort of see what the primary keys, those ID fields are the primary keys that were assigned. And so the next thing we're going to do, this one here is the tricky one. So we're going to create an album. Now albums has a title, which is just a string, but it has an artist field, which is an artist. And so this is who made who, and the artist is ABC, which is this variable, right? This title could be a variable too. This variable is an artist object, right? And so we're saying connect this album to AC/DC, right? That's what we're saying. When we made AC/DC, we retained that object and its ID in particular, and we're going to make an album and connect it. Then we have to save it, or it doesn't go in the database. And then we're going to make a Led Zeppelin 4 album, and we're going to give it a title and use this variable Zep, which we created up in here, and then we save that. So we've got, if we take a look now, we say what is in our album table? Album.objects.values. What's in our album table? So we type that, and we see that we've got 3 albums, and you see this field here, artist_ID. That is a convention that says that's the ID key in the artist table. That's a foreign key. It's in the album table, but it points to a key in the artist table, so they name it artist_ID. It's a common pattern in object relational mappers, and as a matter of fact, it's common pattern for people who use SQL to use this pattern. So it just signals right away, I can look at this and know on hundreds of database tables what that means. That is, oh, that's a foreign key into the artist table just by the name of it. It's a convention that the Django object relational mapping enforces, but a lot of people follow the convention even if they're not using the Django object relational mapper. But we now have 2 objects, and they have connections into the artist table. So this is the important part. It's the part you should understand where you're creating a foreign key, but when you're doing this new album, you got to have this variable present. It's got to be there. Okay? So let's make a new genre. Let's make 2 genres. And again, these are just variable names. So I've saved those. I could do genre dot objects dot values. And we can see what we put in genre, but that doesn't surprise us, right? Okay, so now we get to the big deal right here. So we are going to create the track, and the track, if you recall, the track has 2 foreign keys, both a genre and an album. So when we create our first track, the album is the variable zep4, which we made right here, and the genre is rock, which is the variable we made right here. Okay, and so that's how we indicate that the genre is rock. And we do that. The title, rating, length, and count, they're just standard fields in this. And then we say x.save. Boom. And then we got these other ones. But the pattern is the same. They're just, when we have foreign keys, we're referencing variables that are themselves the right kind of object. Album equals zep4. That's an album object. Made is an album object. Made is an album object. Met is an album object. A genre object. And rock is a genre object. So I got these, constructed correctly. That's why I gave them to you and didn't make you type them. And now we can take a look at all the tracks we've got. And so it's a little hard to see, but we've got a query set, which is a list. The first object is ID 1, Black Dog, rating 5. Count, album ID, first foreign key, genre ID equals 1. So those are the pointers into the primary keys of the album table and the genre table, respectively. And if you go through this carefully, you see the second one, ID 2, Stairway to Heaven, ID 3, About to Rock, ID 4, Who Made Who, rating, with an album ID of 1 and a genre ID of 2. And if you carefully get it right back, you know that the AC/DC things were metal and the genre is rock. Okay? So now we have set things up, but now we can also look things up. So let's just say we're going to grab that one with a primary key of 1. That's going to be Black Dog here. Track objects get primary key of 1. So that's the variable first. And I can say first. And that tells us it's a track. If I say print first, it uses the stir method, and then it gets to the Black Dog. Okay. Now the stir method is __ stir method is what decides which of these fields shows up when we print that out. That's why the stir method is important when we're defining models. Now we can say print first dot ID. We can say print first dot length GHT. Got that right? Oh, then GTH. Okay. But we can also print first dot genre, which is rock. We could be even more clear to say first genre name. So first genre is a genre object, and name is an attribute of the genre object. We can say print first dot album dot artist dot name. So that says first is this object that we've got, which is this object of the track Black Dog, and then album is the album associated with that track, and then artist is the artist associated with the album, and name is the attribute of the column in the artist table. Okay, and so this is an object, album is first is an object, album is an object within first, and artist is an object within album, and then name is a column within artist. Okay, so I hope that was interesting to you, so that you could see how a one-to-many data model could be worked with and used in Django. Cheers. And welcome to our quick walkthrough of using models in Django. Again, we're working through the Mozilla Developer Network tutorial. So we're in this tutorial about using models. Now this tutorial has a lot of useful information. So this is designing the local library models. This is something you should read carefully and understand. Hopefully you've had some data model design before, or watch some information about data model design. But so we have sort of authors and books and genres and the language and books and how they're checked out. So just read all this. This talks about how we define these models, take from that diagram and turn the models into Django models, how we add fields to those models, how we add foreign keys, logical keys, etc., etc. And so just, I'm going through this fast. I want you to read all that. And what I'm going to do is jump down to this defining local library models, because this is sort of the work that you've got to do. So once you understand all that, through whatever way you understand it, we're going to go ahead to our Python Anywhere account and start a new bash console. And then we're going to say work on Django 2, pick our virtual environment. Then we're going to go cd Django projects. I say DJ tab there. And then local library is the project. And if we take a look, we've got the catalog. Local library is the configuration. We've been editing these files all along. And so here we are. If you recall, we've run the SQLite command in previous that we can see what's in here. We're going to be adding some new tables. So we're going to edit the file catalog models.py. I'll use nano to edit that. And it has something in there. It's exactly as predicted here. And then we're going to add, I'm just going to add one of the models. There's several that we've got to add, but for now I'm just going to paste that one in and Control X, Y, enter. And so now if I do a get status, you can see that I've made one small change. Okay, so when we've made this change, this whole concept of make migrations, all make migrations does, it looks at all the models.py file, and there's some in there already for the administration, which we're going to see in the next assignment. This looks at the models. Now this one's going to detect changes. So there's a new model in that file. So we have to create what's called a migration. A migration is a script that basically creates new tables or updates tables, etc. So we're going to run the make migrations, and then we're going to actually do the migration. So these are separate. So the migrations would get, if we were running in production, you might check the migration into GitHub and then run migrate both locally and on your production server. So we'll just do the migrate right away. And the migrate is what is actually creating the new table. And we already did kind of a get status. We can see that we got two new files. We'll deal with those in a second. Okay. But now we're going to run this command right here, SQLite3, and we're going to read that database file. So if we take a look at the files, it's this file. So that is how we do it. So we're in an SQLite command line browser. You can see how to use this. But dot tables, we see this new one. So if you looked at it before, you saw all these things. But now, because we've added this new model file, we have this catalog.genre. So schema tells us what the shape, copy, paste. So this tells us a SQL create table that would be necessary to create this. We have a primary key named ID, and then a name field. So that's a pretty simple table. And if we take a look at the migration, that's what we had. We had this name, which was basically some text, okay, and the ID is automatically generated. It's the primary key that's automatically generated. So that's away we go. So yeah, so you can either hit Control D or .quit. I'll hit Control D here. So here we are, and so now we can edit this again. This time I'll use VI, catalog models.py. Again, learn to use that tab. Go to the end with a 0G, 0 capital G, and now I'm just gonna kind of blast these things in here. Copy these guys. It'd be better for you to understand this. So one of the problems that people have, I think, open a new line, is people are so much in a hurry to get through these tutorials, and of course I'm blasting through them too, that you just type this and you just put it back in without understanding it. And that just means that you're going to have to come back and you're going to have to actually learn this when it comes time to writing an application that you're doing yourself. And then the author model. To look at these for a little bit of time. I'm just showing you how to do it here, so you're not wasting too much time watching me on the video. Escape, :WQ to save it. If I do a get diff, this is the more prompt here, this little colon. So I've got a genre model, a book model, a book instance model, and an author model. So those are the actually an author model. And then Q gets me out of that. These are basically the models that represent, in a sense, everything except the language. Okay, and so you've got to actually add the language here, and it's kind of telling you where you're supposed to hook the language up, what kind of a thing. So you, in this challenge, you've got to add the language. Okay, so there's a challenge down here. Figure out where to hook it up, read all these models, and then add a language model and get that right as well. Connect it to the right place. Again, there's a bunch of stuff that you got to read. That's unfortunate. So see this thing about language model? You got to do this too. I'm not going to do it in this video. So now that we've got these things done, we're going to run the make migrations again. So it's going to have 2 migrations when we're done. I could have done all the edits and done 1 migration, but I just wanted to show you. And then I want to do the migrate to actually create the tables. Okay, and so if I do an SQLite, and I look at .tables, you see now I got a lot more. I've got like this genre was there before, but now I've got like catalog author, and I can say .schema. Catalog author, and we see the primary key, the first name, the last name, date of birth, date of death, and that of course is taken straight from these things right here. So this is called an object relational mapper, which takes this object, author object, and then turns it into a set of tables in a database and does joins automatically. We'll get to all that eventually. So .quit or Control D gets us out of that. So we've seen that, and at that point we're all done. We've got our models, got our model created. If we are doing this in GitHub, oops, where'd I just go? Where am I? Local library, PWD, local library, there I am. So if I do a git status here, so you can see all the things that have been added in my local library, and then I'm going to just say git add catalog migration star, because all these added files aren't there yet. So that's okay. PyCache, something you'd never want to add. It just ended up in that star, so it's okay. Git status. So these are the added files and the catalog files, and then we're going to commit that and push it into our Git repo. Okay, so now I typed in my password, and so it's all set up. And just for our own sanity, we're going to give ourselves another tag in our GitHub repo just so we can keep track of the fact that, because you might have made a couple of commits. We really only made one commit. I did, because I knew what I was doing. And then we'll upload the tags to GitHub. And so if I look at GitHub, CSev, Django projects, see we got 5 commits. That one we just did, and 2 releases, the skeleton release and the models release. And so that pretty much finishes things up for the, oh, let me just show you one more thing. I'm going to hit Control D to end this, or exit will do it, but I hit Control D, and that closed the console. You may need to download and turn in as a part of your assignment the SQLite file. So you go into Django projects, local library, and DB SQLite, and then you download it right here. So it downloads that file, and then you end up with this file locally on your hard drive. And so if you have a command line on your computer or the SQLite browser on the computer, you can look at this, and you may have to turn it in as part of your assignment. So that's how you download the file if you need to do that. Okay, so thanks for listening, and to our little discussion of Django models. Welcome to the walkthrough of the Django admin website assignment. We are going to be going through this. You're going to be going through this. And so this is part 4 of the Mozilla Developer Network tutorial. I'm not going to go through in super great detail. There's a lot to do here. Got to outline. So here's one of the things you got to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the autograder in this one, because there's a couple subtle things you got to do differently. At some point in here, you are going to create an autograder. Create a super user. Right here, create super user. It prompts you for an account, an email address, and a password. And the autograder is going to ask you to create an account and a password so it can log in and it can exercise your assignment. So it'll check things. It checks things. You have to make an author of a certain name and a book with a certain name, and these are randomly chosen and different for every student. If you don't have the right account, it'll say you haven't done the admin account yet. But if it logs in and it finds that admin account, then it does things. It looks for links and finds things, and it's just working through the site administration. It looks through the authors, and then it looks to see that the names are right. It looks to see that you've changed the detail. All these things that are the things that you're supposed to change in this. And so it goes and it clicks through here, but book instances, it checks to see that this filters here. So the autograder checks a number of things, right? And if you got all the things it's looking for, away you go. Okay, so that's the autograder is telling you. So it might do you well, and I say it right here, it might do you well to take a look at the autograder before. If you're submitting this to the autograder, you should look for specific instructions, because both it makes you want to make a second super user. I wouldn't make it the only super user, because you're going to want to be able to delete that, and you can delete the super users if you want. And so there you go. So basically the outline of this is we are going to edit a file, this models file. I mean, this admin file. So what the admin file is doing is it's extending this administration, right? And so the administration, before you've extended it, just shows you this. And then you can add this whole set of new models, authors, book instances, books, and genres. And the way that works is, and I've got this already done, so I'm not going to go through all the pasting. Is it admin.py? Yeah, there we go. So all this stuff, this is when you're all done. This is what it looks like. You're going to register the model. It has there's a couple different things, and then you got to add this detail here, and then this is what it looks like at the end, okay? And so you've registered the genre, you register the author, you register the books, and you register the book instances, and there's things that you're supposed to do. And these are all sort of throughout. This is the first step, and then you're going to create that super user. Again, every time you see this Python 3 manage run server in their instructions, that's when you got to go here and do the reload, right? You got to do this reload. Now, if this reload fails, and probably by now it has failed once or twice, the place to look is in these error logs, access logs or server logs, but the server log is pretty useless. The error log is the most useful thing. Let me show you what that looks like. And so every mistake I have made, right? So this is very beginning, in the early days, my allowed host wasn't right. I had mistyped something in my WSGI file. You'll get used to these things. No module test site, blah, blah, blah. I'm making all kinds of mistakes here. So I couldn't find a file catalog URLs, and then I made an error on this one here. I think is a indentation error because I had in the wrong space here. So what you do is you want to go to the bottom of this, whatever your latest mistake is, right? And so this was my latest mistake. There's a lot of tracebacks and stuff, so you got to figure out what these things are. But the bottom line, I don't know, I wish there was a way to clear these, but I don't know how to clear them. It'd be nice to have a little clear button right there. They're periodically rotated. So come to this error log. If you go to your website, like this website, and it says something like, this is all blown up, okay? This is okay. We still, this is okay for now because we still haven't built the app yet. We're only playing with the administration interface on this assignment. So that's still okay. Don't worry about that. That's the next tutorial. We're going to fix that, okay? But all I'm saying is every time you're going through here and it tells you to run the server, well, it is expected that you've stopped the server, made these changes, and then you're starting the server back up. Whereas our server on Python Anywhere is just always running. So you got to reload it. And you got to reload it even if you're just using the admin, because it forces the reload of some of this configuration information. And you're changing configuration information so that this filter shows up. Okay? So that's one of the files that you edit. I can use get status here. The other file that you edit is in the models file. So as you go, I try to point this out in the instructions, and that is these list views, that some of the changes go into the models file, and it's hard as you go through. It tells you to put in some books. Yeah, so this is changing this admin.py file that you already saw there. And then this right here, this is a mistake I made. You're actually editing the models.py file here instead. So this is in the models.py, and this was already there. This is a big long file, and I added these lines right here. So if I do a clear and a get diff, you can kind of see how all these changes ended up happening. So in admin.py, I had all these new things, and then in models.py, I added this one line. And like I made the mistake, you saw the error, or I had this with on extra space, so the indent was incorrect. And it's not like running a Python program in your own command line. You have to go find these errors down in these logs. But it's the same kind of errors that you've seen coming from Python. They're just going into logs rather than coming out on the console as you're running your application. So again, you're going to do all these things. You're going to add the pages. And so I didn't add a bunch of books. You're supposed to add more books, and the autograder will probably complain if you don't do a few more books. But I just added the ones with the author I was supposed to add, and with a genre of science fiction. And so you're going to figure out this administration user interface, which I honestly think is a really pretty interface. I'd like to use this in some of my own data. I'm sure I can figure that out later, how to use this myself. And so if you run the autograder, you're going to, it's going to run all these things, and it's going to be customized for you, and it's going to ask you to create an author and a book that's particular to you, so you can't use other people's homework. And it's looking for things like, was the author's detail page altered? Check to see if the book, when this blows up and these are red, then you sort of look straight above the red, and then you can figure that out. So I'm not going to go through all the gory details of this. I'll put this into Git, right, when this is all said and done, and away you go. Okay, and this, I already showed you how to, I also showed you in here how you can wipe out your database. Let me go through that real quick. So this file, db.sqlite, so this file right here, db.sqlite, that is a file that is your entire database, right? So I can rename, in Linux, move is renamed, move db.sqlite to zz.sqlite. There we go. So now I don't have a database, and if I started running some of these things, it would probably start blowing up pretty badly. See, it's blowing up really badly because I don't have a database. And so the way you make databases is sitting. So if you look at the migration, don't they have migrate here? Oh, we don't have it. Oh, got it right here. So there's make migrations when you do new things to your models, and then the migrate actually creates the database. So if I go and I do Python 3 manage make migrate, oops, Python 3 manage migrate, it will actually make a brand new empty database. So now so if I do an ls-l, you'll see that there's this like smaller database that has no data in it. It doesn't even have the super user in it at that point. So this has all my data for my books and super users, etc. And you'll notice when I come over here, it's like, oh, you're not even logged in because that user doesn't exist yet. So, but then let me show you something else you can do. Because this database is here, I can just like rm db.sqlite3, and then I can rename zz.sqlite3 to db.sqlite3. Now, it wouldn't hurt at this point to, when you're doing stuff like I'm just doing right here, to go ahead and reload your web application. The changes I did don't really essentially require it, but watch this. Now I can log in again, and there's all my stuff back, right? And so it's all there. So I just point out that if you want, you can actually save this. You can back it up. You know, these are just folders in a file system that you're running, and you can save things and make use of them. And then, of course, if you're going to save all this stuff, you can put all into GitHub. Okay. So I hope this was helpful. I'm going to let you do a little bit more on your own going forward. I think that these tutorials, you know, I hope by now that you can do these tutorials without me clicking every click. Cheers. Hello and welcome to our next tutorial. In this, we're going to actually start building some HTML that belongs to us. We're going to be working through the Mozilla Developer Network. Tutorial part 5, and so in this one we're going to actually build some UI. Now this here is an important diagram. I encourage you to read about this. This is sort of the model view controller. Model view controller is the pattern that these applications work. Model is sort of the storage. The view is the user interface that you see that's produced, and the controller is the taking and routing of the incoming request to the appropriate view and then moving from one view to another. So we'll talk about this in some detail. Right now we're sort of blasting through. We're going to build initially a page that says catalog, and then we're going to work on some of these other ones in upcoming. So the first thing, this is something that has already been done. That doesn't change. And now we're going to edit this catalog/urls.py. Go into my get. So I'm into, clear. So go into catalog. And so I am going to take a look at the urls.py. And this was empty, so you add this line. But now, if you go to my documentation here, we got to add these other lines here. These lines right there, they're in the documentation. Just get them right, add them in, and so I've got them right here. That's just some comments, and so these have to do with serving static files, which we'll talk about in some detail later. So you got to get your URLs file right. So this is from the Mozilla tutorial. This is stuff that I'm asking you to do. And then we edit this file. Well, first we make some folders, make a folder called templates, make a folder called static, make a subfolder called CSS, and then we edit this. So these already exist. And so this is something that just comes straight from the, and so I changed this right here. So this is a little bit different. And this is something that the autograder needs so that it knows who actually is writing this website. It's an equivalent to your name, but it's not your name. So if you're using the autograder, it'll tell you that you've got to add this line in this base view. And so this base is something that we extend. It's kind of an object-oriented pattern for views where you have this base view and then you make a view that extends the base view. Right, and so edit the views.py. I should add I'll add a little note here about check the autograder. Oh, here it is. Autograder may require the addition of a meta. Yeah. And then create this file static style CSS. This is the file that we're going to be serving that right way. And then edit the index.html, templates index.html. Templates index.html. And this extends, basically tells it to take everything that's in that base and then make use of it. And this block content replaces the content block. The autograder also tells you to change this from the sample, but the rest of this pretty much comes straight from the sample. So we get that right. And then, so the tab under your, oh, I guess I got to open myself a new window. So as you're messing around with these files, it's a good idea to, from time to time, like if the urls.py or the views.py, they're sort of configuration files, and then just reload your application so that when you get the refresh, you get the new stuff. And so there are some times that you have to do this reload before you refresh this page, or you don't see the stuff. And so when you see it, away you go, and you'll see that if I do a view source on here, you see this. I changed how this style sheet was supposed to be done, and I added this meta tag for the autograder. And the autograder right here tells you remove the super user that you did in a previous one, or take points off, and then add this meta tag, and then you run the autograder there. So that's basically it. Let me do a get diff so you can see Did I lose my console? Somehow I'm always trying to open in a new tab and then I lose my console. But the console comes back. Here's the console. So if I do a git status, you can see all the things. And then I can say git add static, git add templates. And now I can do another git status. And you can see all the added files. So these are the 2 files that I added. These are the 2 files that I modified. And again, everything that I've been told to do is in there. And then if you're following along on GitHub, git status, I can see these, and then I just the add, and now I'm going to commit and say the views tutorial complete. Git commit. That's all the files, and that's the message, views tutorial complete. And then I can say get push. Paste in my GitHub password and push that all up. And then just so that I can go back to this, I'm going to add a tag. Actually, I'm going to call this one home. Git tag home. And then get push origin minus tags. Get push origin minus tags. So now I should do a get status and everything should be up to date. Okay, so that's sort of a pretty quick walkthrough of this little bit of building the home page, and increasingly I'm going to let you do some of your own work and just read the tutorials that come from Mozilla. Cheers. So hello and welcome to our walkthrough of our next tutorial on the generic views tutorial, right? So I'm gonna do this walkthrough a little bit differently. The last one I sort of hurried up and showed you everything that I did. This time I'm going to not even use my own cheat sheet here. I'm going to just sort of bang through the tutorial. Hang on. So I'm just going to bang through the tutorial and make some mistakes along the way. Some I'll make on purpose and some I'll make on not purpose. Okay? So I'm going to kind of avoid this part here, which is my little set of crutches. And so here we go. So let's just go start here. Gonna book list page. Okay, book all the records. Okay, so the first thing we gotta do is edit the urls.py and add this line right here. Oops, come back. CD Django local library catalog. That way I can do all vi urls.py. So that stuff at the bottom, this here is just stuff I had to do, remember. And so now we've got another route. So this basically urls.py is sort of like it's just a rotator. It like takes the request and figures out from the path on the request where to send it, okay? And so if I look at my application, let's just reload it. It never hurts to reload your application here and there as you make changes. And so I'm going to go to this, which was the result. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put something under here. If you notice, there is no /books here. Okay, and so there is no /books here, and so the book list view blew up. So that's complaining about, okay, hang on a sec. Let's see if we can get this to blow up right here. Okay, so look at this. I went to catalog. The only thing I changed is I added this. And so what this is this says take this URL, books/ and route it to inside the views.py file a class called booklist, and then as view is a method, and it gives it a name, and I'll show you in a second where that name comes in. And so if I go back to it, I reload it, I go to it, it's reading this views.py file, right? This urls.py file somewhere. I don't know, you can go all the way down here. Where is urls.py? Doesn't matter. It's saying, oh, catalog.views has no book. And so it's complaining about the views.py it needs a book list view. So if we look, of course, if we had looked, it says go into views.py and add this thing. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go into the console, get out of this. Sorry, I'm using the VI editor. It's quicker for me. If you just have to use your nano editor or whatever you want, but I'm now going to just use VI because I'm fast in it. So I got to edit the views.py file. Don't throw any of this stuff away. Just add this, okay? And so there we go. We got book list view. Now, what's really cool here is Django views generic, and there's some documentation for it. Let me go show you some of that. Probably the best Google here is django.views.generic. This is a bunch of classes that are part of Django, because this notion of a list view and a detail view is so common that we could all write our code from scratch, or we could just borrow these things, and it's pretty dang awesome, and I really like it. So, okay, there's some documentation. I've got a link to that in the hand. So and so what this does is this does a whole bunch of stuff for us. It retrieves stuff with a model, it sets it up, and it calls and renders a page. And it does this all by naming convention, which we'll see in a second. So when I do that, now here's an interesting thing. Whether or not at this point I have to reload Python anywhere. Now I don't know for sure how this works, but I'll tell you roughly how it works, that I think it works. So if you're sitting on an error, it has to kind of reload a bunch of stuff anyway. So some of you don't have, sometimes if you're looking at an error and you want to just press refresh, the error can be fixed because it was like broken, and so it tries to do it again. And so it said, I tried to read the views.py file and I didn't get what I wanted, and I'm blown up. So when I hit the refresh, I don't think I have to restart the web application for this one. So let's see if I'm right or wrong on this. So I hit refresh. Ka-ching. The catalog views has no attribute book list view. Well, that suggests to me, did I get it right? Book list view? It's there. Okay, so that suggests I was wrong, that it'll be a lot happier if I reload it. So let's see what happens. Now it's going to reread the view files for sure. What I was hoping is it was rereading that view files before. And now let's see if I hit refresh. Boom, there we go. So it's funny, I wasn't using any of that new code at all. All I was using, I mean, I'm not calling this books thing or anything, right? I'm not even linking to that new books view. Let's go back here. urls.py. I'm not really linking into this. I'm not doing anything. I would have to add /books. Now we'll see something here. When we go to /books, if we add /books to here, we will get into that view. And now it's going to complain. It's like, oh, template does not exist. Catalog booklist.html. So now actually my routing, my urls.py is right, and my views.py, but there is no template. Now the name of this template, and if I'd have sneaked forward, oh, here we go. This is looking for a template that's right here, catalog/booklist. And you read all this stuff. This is a really good documentation from Mozilla. I just love it. It's better than a textbook. I mean, I just love this stuff. So I have to create this file. I'll copy this right here. I'm going to create this file. Okay, so I have to make there is no, if you look at templates, there's no folder called catalog, so I got to make dir templates catalog. I just cannot hit the I can't hit the tab key until it actually exists. Now my ls-l, ls-l, templates. Catalog's there, and now I can edit this file, catalog/booklist.html. Now, if you cheat and go ahead, you'll see it's doing some stuff. I don't think much of this matters. It's telling you different things you can do, and it tells you to put this in. And we're going to put this in a second, okay? But we're not going to for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into here. Oh, come back. Go in here, and I'm going to say, hello. Oops. Let me do this. No. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. What did I do wrong? Oh, dang it. VI templates catalog book list. Booklist.html is just in the wrong place. So I'm just going to put some crazy text in here. Yada, yada, yada. Bold, yada, /B. So I'm just putting some text in here. I'm not doing what the tutorial is telling me to do. I will eventually do that. Now if I hit refresh, this books is going to go to the template, which is then going to go find that HTML in this file, wherever, right there, that one right there, template catalog booklist.html. If all goes well, it'll find it. There we go. And if I do a view source here, view page source, look, that's exactly that stuff. So what's going on in these templates basically is this is just HTML, but by us adding all this like fancy stuff like this stuff here, come on, 1D, D, G. So what this extends here, this little curly brace % stuff, says go find the file base generic HTML, and then where it has a content block, replace that with this, okay? And then there's like an if statement and a for loop. Come on. There's an if statement, there's a for loop. These are all syntax of this templating. And then there is an object called book_list, which is a name by convention. This is the books model that we're dealing with. Because if you look, I'll show you in a sec. If you look at that thing, the model that we're going to use is the book model. So this is lowercase the book list. It's going to go grab all the books in the list and away we go. Okay? And it's going to print this stuff out and book title and all these things, okay? So now we're going to run that one. Now I believe when we're in debug mode, the templates, right? So see this reverse for book detail not found. Let's talk for a second about this book.getAbsolute URL bit, right? Let's just take this out for a second. I'll copy that for later. Make this £sign. That's an href to nowhere generally. And so now if I come here, let's see if it works. Yeah. So there we go. And so what happens now is this link. If I do a view source of this, well, if I do a view page source here, you can see that these links are to href. And it was complaining before. It was failing before because it could not resolve this bit right here. So I'm going to put it back to the way. That's a thing that we're got to fix in a second. And now let's see. Yeah, okay, so now it's back. So it auto reloaded that view. I changed that view and it auto reloaded it. So we're fine. We're okay. That mistake is not a particularly bad mistake. Okay. So let's go back to the tutorial. It's talking about for loops, talking about variables, read all this stuff. Okay. Then we got to go to this generic base generic. And what we're going to do now is, oh, well, let's go back here. That's not good. We're going to just change what's underneath this link. So you'll notice this link doesn't do anything. And so let's change VI templates base generic. And right here, we say to URL. URL is kind of like a built-in function that says, go find me the route to the controller, the view that I've named book. So this little bit is this is like a function call. This is like a parameter to the function call. And what this is looking up is it says find me and construct me a path to the view that has, oh, not that, URLs, which view name equals books. Did I get that wrong? Did I get that wrong? Yeah, it's supposed to be books. Hey, but that's okay. That's okay. That's a mistake. Let me show you the mistake I made. I just happened to notice my mistake. No. Template. Oops. template base generic. Look here. See, I said book, and I was supposed to say books, but I don't want to fix that yet because I'm going to hit refresh and see what happens. So now I'm expecting this to become a real link, but it's not going to become a real link. It's going to blow up. Reverse for book, not found. And so what it's doing is saying, find me a view that has a name in urls.py of book. And there was none. There was one called books, but not book. So now I'll change this to be books. And I shouldn't have to reload it. When in doubt, it's okay to hit this button as many times as you like. It just slows you down. But usually when things are blowing up, yeah, it works. And so now, by changing this, you'll notice that the URL, I can even inspect it. The book is catalog/books. It looks like it's concatenation, but it's not. It's actually looking up in urls.py to find the right thing. Okay? So now let's go to books. Reverse for book detail not found. Remember, I showed you that before. And that's just because we got to go further down, right? We got to go further down. So we got to do this book detail page because it's trying to generate that list. It's trying to generate the list. VI templates, catalog, book list. It's this line right here that's messing us up, right? It wants to have the book for the URL for the path to the detail page of this object, okay? So now let's get to the point where that part works. That's why it's blowing up. Other than that, this little template looks fine. Yeah. So let's go back to our tutorial. So we're going to have to add a new thing to our URL mapping. Well, let's do this. Get status. So I have changed base generic. I've changed urls.py and views.py. Get def just for yucks. So I changed this, which I showed you. I changed this, which I showed you. And then I added this little view. And then there's a new file. Okay, so that's the changes I've made so far. And I'm going to keep going. I need to add another sort of URL mapping for a new path. And so this path here is basically saying it's book and then a second parameter, which we're going to expect to be an integer that's going to become the primary key for the detail. And so we need to go and put another thing in the views file, and we're going to name this thing. And this is the name thing is going to make it so we resolve this error right here. Okay, so get out of here. Views.oops. Okay, and so it tells us to add another view. It does explain a little bit about regular expressions, which are wonderful. But here we're going to do the book detail view. Oh, come back. So the difference here is the book list view and the book detail view, we're extending two different classes. This is the list view that comes from Django. This is the detail view that comes from Django. We're just saying using this model. Now you can add, as it shows you there, a lot of other things. But for now, we can effectively just inherit all the capabilities of the detail view, and then we tweak them by changing them here. Okay, so let's see if it blows up or if it fixes itself. Yeah, now we need to reload. See, I think it's fixed. Book detail, let's see. Let's reload it. Reload it. Reload it. Yay! Now, let's see what happens when we click on this. So now you'll see what the book is. Book 1, that's the primary key of the book. If you go into your... does it tell us our primary key here? It doesn't, but it does say it right here. That shows the primary key. So let's go ahead and look at template. Oh, well, that's because the detail template doesn't exist. Once again, but that's still good. We're in pretty good shape. All books is working, right? Home is working. All books is working. So that's nice. But this detail page, we now have our views file right and our URLs file right, but then they are looking for a template. with a particular name, and that template of the particular name is catalog bookdetail.htm. And if we look at our tutorial, it's telling us, yeah, that's just kind of giving you some internal stuff. This is basically giving you what to put in that. Don't skip all those reading things, right? These assignments are not for you to do as fast as possible, because at some point I'm going to turn around and say, okay, now you seem to know everything. Just write a thing. I'm not going to give you any help whatsoever, or very little help. And so this is the moment where you have a chance. Book. So the names of these files are by convention. The book list. Book is the model we're working with. List is the fact that it's a list view, and detail is the fact that it's a detail view. And so I'm just doing this to save you time, pasting this in. Okay, and so another thing to notice here is, remember a little mistake we made where it was blowing up and I put a pound sign in here? Probably a pound sign is a more reasonable thing to do. Good web developers tend to put a pound sign in here to say go nowhere. That's, if you say no, if you leave it blank, it goes to the back to the same page, which makes no sense. Pound sign says don't go anywhere, because it's a internal anchor in the document. So I make that change, and now I can go back to the detail page, and it works. And the thing that blew up, well, the thing that blew up was the fact that well, we didn't have this file bookdetail.htm, and now it worked. And so it's not blowing up, right? But this here has no, like, it's a link to nowhere basically. Inspect. And that's because we haven't got, like, we want this to jump to the detail page for the author, but we can't. We got to do that next. Okay. So bash console. So that's good. So that's W. Let's get out of that. So I think we mostly have this at this point. Let's see. Again, read all this stuff. Don't just scroll by it. I'm scrolling by it because I kind of know it. Okay. Yeah, don't click on the author detail. Oh, let's do pagination. Okay. So this is another very cool thing. And this is just, again, part of the list view. Pagination is when you have more records than will fit on a screen. And it's really important to do this for efficiency and for UI stuff. And it turns out for us, all we have to do in this list view is say paginate by and a number. VI views. And it's in the list view that we do this. Oops. Come back. Paginate by 10. I'm going to change this to be 2. Ooh. Let's do this. See what I made there? I was going to mess that up. So now we'll see if I have to reload. Let's just run this. This is the views file. Let's go back to all books. Okay, so what's happened is I've got a syntax error in my views file, but because it hasn't reloaded the views file, it seems like it's still working. So now I've introduced an error. I was trying to add a line, right? I was trying to add a line, but I introduced a syntax error. So let's go ahead and reload it. And let's click over here. Boom! On indentation on views.py on line 34. So it's trying to recompile views.py, and I have made a Python syntax error. This is just a Python error. This is not like a Django error. This is a Python error. So let's fix that, and let's see if I have to reload. See, because sometimes it auto reloads for you. It wouldn't have hurt for me to do a reload there, but sometimes it does auto reload. Oh, and so now what's happening is it's only showing me the first two, but then what I have to do is then continue on in the tutorial and add the code to create them next in the back. And so what we do is we find this file. I'll be right back. I gotta go let the dog out, and then I'll come back. You can hear him barking in the background. Okay, so now I'm back. I'll show you a picture of my dog. Name's Cutter. So here we go. Templates, where was I? Oh, I got to edit my generic view, the base of a generic view. And the instructions there are not ideal. I'm going to split this out on its own line. And then put the div in. And then you want to put this right here. There might be another way to do this with a different div, but I'm just going to add it right here. And this is just a big bunch of stuff that is going to trigger if pagination is turned on and showing this is all objects that are going to be dropped into our template if we've turned pagination on. And so this is a way for it to know whether it's paginated or not. So it does absolutely nothing if it's not paginated. So if all goes well, we should hit refresh. But we need it because let's just reload it. Or did I save it? Oh, I didn't save it. Yeah. There we go. So that's the pagination. So that came from that previous. And interestingly, this generic base generic is actually also happening when I'm in this detail page, but it's not down here. It's hidden because we didn't, in the detail page, we didn't turn pagination on. In the views.py, we have pagination turned on in the list view, but not in the model view. The pagination makes no sense in the detail view because the detail is really only looking at one record. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to show you. Yeah, and then you got to finish this by yourself, which means that you've got to go back through all this stuff that I just did and add new URL routing, new views, and new templates for authors. But the pattern should be pretty much the same. And so that is basically the first half of the Django detail pages tutorial. You will have to finish the authors on your own, but rest assured you're probably better off trying to do it yourself. And I showed you in this demo a few errors so that you could see a little bit more of the things that might go wrong as you're cruising through, given that you gotta kind of do some of this by yourself. Okay? Cheers. Hello and welcome to my walkthrough on the users and authentication tutorial. So unlike the previous tutorial, which was the sessions tutorial, which was really quick, this one's pretty significant, okay? And like always, try to read all of it. It's not always the best idea to just jump to what to cut and paste in this, because part of our goal is for you to learn along the way, because it's not that much longer before you're going to have to do all this by yourself, and then we're not going to give you a series of cut and paste tutorials. The tutorials are to get you used to where files are at and how you add features to a Django application. So I'm not going to go through all of the detail. I will just show you the features that we're adding here in this particular one. So the thing that's new here is login, and you have to use the admin to make an account. And if you are using if you are using the auto grader, it will tell you to make a user, and as always you got to put the right meta tag in so that you can't turn in other people's work, and then you're supposed to have that book and that author and all that stuff from the previous tutorials that's been bugging you, meaning you can't pass the auto grader with all that stuff. Okay, and so you have to make an account, and this of course is different for everybody. And so you log in, and then this is a login page that comes from Django, and we'll see how those URLs are put together, this accounts login. And this is an ID and a password. I can put in the one, it doesn't matter, I've got either one working. This is, and so I log in, and then when you've been logged in, it adds this thing that says, hello, you are MDN tutorial. And there is a thing about which books you've borrowed, and you've got to set that up in your using the admin, and the tutorial kind of walks through all that, how to add the user, and then how to add the thing, and I've got some stuff in my own where I'm telling you to how to connect these things and how to check the book out. So it shows you how you got to go into the admin UI. I won't show you that, but it's not too hard. You got to check the book out to the right person. You have to set the status to on loan. So this borrowed feature, and then you can log out. And that's the main thing that you've got to do. So you add this is your app that you had before. You got to log in. Let me go ahead and show you how the admin works. I probably should have just added this. Let's conveniently, I'm logged in as my admin user. So basically you do have a model change here. So the book instances, so you got to make a book instance, and you have to set the status to on loan, and then you have to, the thing that you add in this tutorial, let's find the migrations. Right, so this part right here that you're doing about adding a foreign key to say who the borrower is, so that makes it so this shows up. So you got to do the migration, and of course you got to restart your web application over and over. Right, you can't restart your web application too often. You just have to wait while you do it. So you got to get the book checked out, and you got to set this to on loan. And when you've got that, then once you've logged in, log in again. There we go. And then this my borrow will work. That was because I sort of ended up with two login screens because I logged in here and I logged in here. But that's okay. So the my borrowed works. So the whole idea is to get this book, that's your particular book, into the borrowed books page for this particular logged in user. Okay. So you are gonna go through this. There's a lot of reading here and a lot of stuff to know and migrations, and I add my own sort of annotation to it. So you should sort of watch my annotation along with it. I talk a little bit about things like when you have to reset, just remind you if you've deleted your super user, you might have to go into the shell and create another one, et cetera, et cetera. So this one's pretty significant because you got a model change. It's our first model change from the very beginning. So let's take a quick look at all of the things. ls-l, Django projects, and cd local library, and then get status. Now get, of course, I hope you're using get, I hope you're using a private repo. This basically really allows your world to keep track of things. So let's take a look at a few things. Let me just kind of go through these in order. The account to urls.py. So this bit right here is changes to the urls.py, get diff catalog urls.py. So this is the new URL pattern that we're adding. Oh wait, that's not the one. Hang on. Let's go back up. Oh, here we are. Let's take a look at this one. Get diff local library. Okay, so here, this basically is a macro-like thing, and it basically creates a whole bunch of authorization URLs using Django's built-in login. And so here's the thing it's telling you to do, and this is creating a whole bunch of authentication URLs. And so you could do these by hand, etc., but it's all being set up for you, right? So that's this one little line does all that stuff, and so you get all this account support. We're gonna do the login, log out. We're not gonna play with the password reset stuff, and so we'll leave some of that till later. So that the setting the URLs to the account thing, there is a new project-wide templates folder, and so this is a little weird. We're in the folder local library, which is our project, and we also have kind of like this subfolder local library. But this templates folder is new. And so get diff, get status. We're going to put the logged in and logged out pages in global templates. And in order to get Django to look in this folder, we have to add a bit of code to the settings.py file, git diff local library settings.py. And this right here says, oh, this is saying, in addition to all the templates in the applications, look in this as well for templates. Now, of course, templates are the HTML with the little curly brace things in them. And then this login redirect URL, that's another thing we've got to add. So we've got to add that. And so we got to make these folders, the templates and the registration, and so you can see those are here. I've already got these. Git status, the templates in the registration folder, template/registration, and then we reload it. I tell you to go to this URL to see that it's blowing up, and then there's a template in login.htm that is given to you. So somewhere down here you're given, see this login.htm, and I've got that as well. So these are templates that are kind of a name by convention, and with this name by convention, these are the things that are going to become the login, and by changing this you can customize what that login forms. Right now we have a very, very basic login form there. We have the same thing for the log out form. Go. Very simple. There's the logged out form that you're told to create. So that's down here as well. And like I said, we're not going to add the password stuff. We'll skip that for now. You can come back if you want, or you can put it in. Doesn't matter. I don't want to try to get email set up, because setting up email on these servers is a little tricky. And then you have to start changing the UI in the base generic, which is the thing that we're sort of extending. We're extending it, so this is the thing that makes this bit over here, and then we change this middle part because that's what we're overriding. And so we're adding a thing that basically says if the user's authenticated, put these three links out: the myborrowed, the user.get username. This new user variable is available to us, and if the user is not logged in, we're going to give them a URL. And again, these are URL.myborrowed. These are the names of these URLs that are in the urls.py. So that should be in local library urls.py, I think. Yeah, okay. Well, actually, it's all here. So then I have to go back here to see what these things were, because it's given these URLs, but it's also given them names, right? So that way you can, here, you can reference that name. So that's looking up the logout name, the login name, and that's coming from here. Previously, we've put URLs in and we've given them names, but when you use this sort of built-in common, convention thing, they put the names in, and we just reference them inside of our code right here, okay? So that is the code that sort of reflects this, and you see as we log out, then it changes, right? And then we log in and it changes. And so there's an if then else basically that changes that text, and that's what we've got right here. And of course it tells you to do that in the tutorial. Where we at? Password reset, we're past that. So there's that. Read all this stuff. So now we're doing the model change, and so what we do here, the way this works is we're basically going to add this field. So the model book instance, well, let me just edit this file. Oops. So these lines right here in book instance, these are the database tables, the database columns for this table. And we added this line right here, and then we added a couple of other things, a little method to help us here. And then what happens when you run the migrations, when you run the make migrations, it looks at the old migrations and then the new model that you've asked for, and then it builds a migration. And so we can take a look at what happens when you do the make migration. It actually creates this file right here. You didn't create this file, but this file got created. And so this is in this migrations folder. In its migrations folder, this basically is telling it what it wants. It wants to add a borrower field. And it's looking like, oh, the previous thing we did was this other migration, but this is the next migration, and add the borrower field. So that make migration doesn't actually change the database. That actually creates this file, okay? And then what happens when you do the migrate is it reads that file and then changes the database. And in this case, it's going to change the data structures inside of SQLite, DB SQLite3 when you do make migrate. But what happens then is you check this in, and if you're running this on multiple servers, you make the migrations and you're sort of as a developer, and then when you're in production, you have to migrate both your developer and then you migrate your production as well. So the migrations are the transactions, the changes that you're going to create. And so that's a thing we're going to do right in the middle here is we're going to make some migrations. We're going to change a little bit of code in the admin. Remember that the admin file, VI catalog admin. So this basically is helping describe in the admin user interface, user interface how we want these things to look, right? So the admin.py is controlling how the book instance is controlled, right? So we're going to add some things here to tell it a little bit more detail. Book instances, this changes the look and feel here, and then changes how this works here. And honestly, this is one of the cool things about Django. This bit right here is actually pretty amazing, and what's going on there. One of these times we're going to look underneath what's going on there, and it's very impressive. And this is one of the things that people like about Django is that you get so much functionality like what's going on here with this drop down, the ability to add a new borrower, delete it, edit it, all that stuff. That's literally quite nice features that people like and don't have to write from scratch. If you're not using Django, you're using a simpler framework, you're going to have to write a lot of that from scratch. But in Django, what we do is we simply take this admin.py file, change a few things, and then this user interface behaves the way we want it to behave. It also is helpful that all the Django applications kind of look the same and function the same instead of us writing this code from scratch. Okay, so we got to change that so that the admin class looks good. Then you got to loan some books. And that's what I mean by this. You got to go into this screen and you got to set it on loan. You got to pick your user because the auto grader is going to look for that. You got to loan some books. That's just using the admin user interface. And then you got to make a new view. You got to make a new view right here. To this login required mixin is basically saying we're going to, in a sense, this view is not going to work if you're not logged in. And then we're going to extend the generic list view. We've used list view before, it tells what model it is, and we tell what the template name is, and we've done paginations before. This get query set is basically a model query that is going to say, take all the book instance objects, filter them by this current logged in user, make sure that they're on loan, and order by due back. So we're going to sort these by due back. So this is going to be a query that's going to read something, and then it's going to dump that data into this template. So that's in views.catalog views py, get diff catalog views.py. So there's the loaned books by user list view, and get diff catalog urls.py. We've added this bit right here so that my books goes to views and we give it a name, right? So that's the name, of course, is so we can use it with the URL thing inside templates. So we've said that when the path is my book, so if you look here and you look at my borrowed, you can see that it's, if you can see at the bottom there, you can see it's my books, where it's this my books. That's how we say route this URL to this view, and then inside the view, this is what we want done when we're running that particular view. And then the other thing we got to do is we got to have this list borrowed user. So this query set is the data that's going to feed this view, and then we're going to read that data in that query set. This query set is going to hit the database, pull data in, and then feed it to the template. So the last thing to look at is the template, and that's this one right here. And it's not too bad. This book instance list is what comes from that that query set, and if we got some, that's fine, and otherwise we go through here and check to see if it's overdue, which is something we added to them. This is a little method we added to the model. I'll show you that in a second. And then we just have a book detail URL. That's again from our URLs file that we had before, the book instance.book.primary key. So this is a foreign key lookup from the book instance into the book, giving our primary key, and the title, etc., etc., etc. So that's that. Let's take a look at this thing right here. vi catalog models.py. This is the is overdue, right? So this is just the logic this is the logic in the model for when this book is overdue. And so we're just using it in the template. So as a way, putting it in the model, you could have wrote an if statement in the template. You could have just kind of done the same do back thing to check the date. But this concept of is overdue is likely to be used in multiple templates. So we tend to put this in the model because it's just a better place to put it, okay? So I think that about covers it. Let's see, I think I covered this, I covered that, I covered all these things. And so again, this particular one here, this is a chunk of work, this users and authentication, because it's a new UI, it's login mixin, it's a bunch of things. And so give yourself a bit of time and relax and work through it. And again, don't just worry about getting it done. Start knowing what files do what and how this application sort of fits together within Django, how we communicate to Django, how we want the application to fit together. So thanks for listening, and I hope this helps. Cheers. Hello and welcome to our walkthrough on the forms tutorial. Now in this forms tutorial we're going to actually step back and finish a challenge phase, because the forms tutorial kind of depends on us finishing this challenge phase. So this is the challenge yourself part, where we're going to do this can marked returned, etc., etc. And so it talks about these permissions. And they're leaving this kind of a little open-ended so that you have to figure some stuff out. But I kind of broke down and handed you most of the stuff that you've got to do. I would suggest that, try this challenge. It will be a good measure if you can figure this out. It's okay if you have to go back to the little helper. But I've given you a step-by-step to add this librarian view that's part of the challenge. They don't do this in the Mozilla Developer Network version of it. So let's take a look at the results. I won't just do all the work, but I can show you through git status what's going on here. So if we take a look at the git diff of models.py, catalog models.py, you can see what I really did is just add this permissions line, and then you run the migrations, do make migrations, and then do the migrate. And I already did that, and the make migrations creates this file for us, and then the migrate updates the SQL database structure and schema, etc. So I've done that. I've done those two things. And then we'll go and we'll reload our application. Like there's one thing about this course, there's as many reload applications as you want. Okay. And then you got to go into site administration, and then go into groups, go into library staff, and this, if you hit refresh, this, let's move this back over, this catalog book instance, or come on, hit refresh. Oh, I have to do this, and then I have to save it, then I have to go back in. So now we can see catalog book instance can set book as returned. Okay, so that's the permission that we've done here, right? That's the permission we've added. Oh, come back. So we're going to copy this over, and now this permission is available to everybody that's in the library staff group. And then I say save, and you can see that our user DJ4E, we've added them to the library staff group. You could create separate users, but we'll just make all of this library staff group. And I'm even cheating because I'm logging in as the administrator, but you shouldn't do that. We're going to, because the autograder is going to log in as the as that person. So you need to make that person work, not just the administrator. It's a little, you can, certain bugs can happen if you are that you don't detect them when you're running as the administrator. So the autograder is going to test that. So so here we are, and so I refreshed it, I reloaded it, and then we are going to add some URL patterns, and that's in our urls.py, git diff catalog urls.py. So I added this borrowed path, so that's like a URL. It's going to be like /borrowed right there. I did that. And I've got another view, and I gave that view a name so we can use it in URL statements. So then we're going to go into our views. Catalog, views. And so we've imported this permission required mixin. And this is kind of like the login mixin. If let's just edit the views. So the thing we did in the previous one was this loan books by user list view, and we did the login required mixin. And what that basically says is this view is not going to allow itself to be run unless you're logged in. And that was necessary because we added this filter to say these we're only going to show the checked out book instances checked out for the logged in user. And so login required mixin. Now permission required mixin is a little more powerful than login required mixin in that it also not only insists that you're logged in, but you have a particular permission. So the thing that's different between these two things is we've got this additional permission required, and we set that up in the model, and additional permission required. And you'll notice I took out the filter here. So this bit of filter is not there anymore. It still filters by checked out and ordered by due back, but this is the view list all view, right? By instead of the by user view. So that's how the views work. And this permissions, this can mark return constant came from this permissions, and literally this migration read this because this is part of the model, and new parts of the model can add new permissions to the system. The system has a lot of permissions. We already sort of saw that. Groups, library staff, lots of permissions. As an application, we can put our own, right? We can, these things have been done for us automatically, and then we added this one thing as a permission that now we're going to use in our application. Some are made for you automatically, and some are not. So that's the view code. All right, so there's the view code. I mentioned that the filter's been changed a little bit here. And then we are going to create the catalog templates book instance. And then I've got git status. I've got this file edited, because this is the file that view effectively passes all the data, and it'll give us a query for the book instance list, and we're going to loop through all the book instances, and we're going to print out the book instance borrower. So that's the little difference between showing my borrowed books. We don't show who's borrowed, but all borrowed books show the user that is the borrower of the book. And so this is the all borrowed books is the librarian's view, and the my borrowed book is an individual's view. So we're in this all borrowed, and so that's the thing we kind of add. So this bit here is mostly the same. And if you click, it's got the title, and we click on the book detail. That's from before. Book due back is before. This book instance borrower is the new thing in the list. So I made this by copying the borrowed by user and just tweaked it a little bit. So it's almost the same. Okay. So then the only thing we got to do is tweak the base generic template. Git diff templates base generic. Catalog templates. Base generic. And now we're checking this perms as a new object. It's all taken care of us automatically. And if the person who's currently logged in can mark returned books, then we will give them a link to the all borrowed URL. And of course, that's in urls.py where we give it a name. And so this only shows up for people who are powerful enough to be in the library staff. And so this is a library staff person, and so now it says all borrowed, and now you can go to the all borrowed link. Okay, so that pretty much walks you through the first half of this forms thing, and I would suggest at this point, if you've got this working well enough so you can see all this, I would then throw this into GitHub. Okay. Again, we like GitHub because it allows us to create moments where we know the code's working. Okay, and so that's what the tag's for. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that, and then up next we will do the second half of this, which is the Django Forms tutorial. Hello and welcome to our last set of views that we're going to add in this forms tutorial. So we're going to be using what's called generic editing views. This is really cool. One of the basic things that web applications have to do, some version of, is what's called create CRUD. Create, read, update, and delete. And we've been doing a lot of reading. And we've been using the administrator, the admin interface, to do sort of let's go find our admin interface here. We've been using the admin interface to do a lot of editing. So for example, authors. We're going to add a new author. There's this add author button. There's an edit author button so we can see it and we can save it. And there's a delete. And so we've been doing this, right? Create, read, update, and delete. It's just a thing. And the administration, a lot of people like Django administration because it does this for us. But at some point, we may want to do some of these things under our control with style that looks like it. And so Django provides us a set of generic views that do a lot of this work for us. Okay, create, update, and delete. We're already kind of doing the read view. So if you think about our code here, you know, all books, this is the read view, this is the detail view, this is also a read view. But if you're going to modify this information so that this is like available to modify or delete this whole record, that's what we're going to do. How to make a new one, how to update an existing one, and then how to delete it. And we're going to do it for authors. We're going to do it for authors. Okay. So we start with these. Django gives us a lot of scaffolding to make this easy because they've got this create, update view, because again, it's really important. We do this a lot. Now, if you look later down, it says, I'm not going to protect these with login, and that's a mistake. And so please, when you're building these, add login required mixin to all three of these. So this is wrong, and this is wrong, but the rest of it's right. Just make it so that you have to be a logged in user to do that, and all you got to do is just add login mixin, and we imported that earlier in the file. Okay, so if we take a look at get status, I've already got this done. If I do a get diff on the views, catalog views.py, you see these, and I've done it right. I just took that stuff, but then I added login mixin. And if you look at this views file farther, you will see that it's got the login mixin, required mixin has been imported. So that's the views. You got to fix the views, right? And then you got to create, there's a form here, author form. I did that right out of the, right. So that I took right out of it, out of the tutorial. And then this confirm delete.html, that comes right out of a tutorial. It reuses this author form both for the creation and the updating. And this confirmation is so that you get sort of a yes. You're not supposed to just delete immediately. You're always supposed to confirm deletes. And so it's not really the delete. It is the confirmation that you really want to do the delete. That's what this user interface does. And then you've got to add, there's some mappings that you got to add to the URLs right there. So if I do a get diff on catalog urls.py, there you go. Just add that in. And again, the create has no primary key because it's going to make a new one. And then the update and the delete take a primary key. And we name them, and we point at those views that I just put in the view file. And so that's pretty nice. Now we're not going to add any, we could add something here like a create, read, update, or delete, but we're not going to do that. You could do that if you wanted to. The key will be, I guess, if we make it so all logged in users. We're a little bit sloppy here because I'm making this all logged in users. If you were making it more sophisticated, you could say, does this person have the permission of creating new or the permission of whatever and showing those links? But for now, we're just going to go straight to those URLs. And if you take a look, when it's all said and done, you just go straight to the URL. And here I am in the author. It's not authors, it's author/create. Create. And so I get this form. And so what that did was that ran through the create view. Create view, that's it. Right? It's got initial value. Why this is that way, I do not know. But come on, there you go. So that's this create, and it grabbed that that template, grabbed this author form template, and that's what basically built this user interface. So Sam Adams. So 09/09/1990. Let's get rid of his death date. And so we're going to submit it. It's going to post it back. Now, so let me show you a bit of code here. Yeah, okay. No, I guess it's all automatic. In this one, it's all automatic, the whole post code. And so we're just going to hit the submit button. And if we take a look at all authors, we can see that Sam Adams is now in our author list. Okay, so Sam Adams is now in our author list. So I go on a detail page. So you'll see that this primary key of this author is 4. Now the interesting thing is we can add the update just to the end of that. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to add /update. Again, you could write some HTML that would show this, but now we see the old Sammy Adams, and now we're going to update it. Go back to all authors, and we see that their name is Sammy Adams. If we go into this one again, author 4, and we go /delete, then it has checked to see if this was Adam Sammy, and you say, yes, I want to delete him, and now Sammy is gone. And so this code now is finished, basically, and you're pretty much done with it. So congratulations if you've gotten this far. I tried to tell you throughout that the goal here is to learn this and not just get it done as quick as possible. So you may have to come back and do this. If you went through this too quickly, you might have missed some of the learning. But again, congratulations on getting to this point. Cheers. Hello and welcome to another of the sample code walkthroughs on Django for Everybody. This particular sample walkthrough is the favorite things. You can see the source code here in favs. Hopefully you have, like I do, the whole source code of this entire DJ-free samples checked out somewhere, maybe on your local computer or maybe on a separate Python Anywhere website in a way that you can watch it. And if you don't have that, you can play with these samples here at samples.dj4e.com. I'm going to run my local copy. So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing. We're really demonstrating many-to-many accounts, but in this case we're also demonstrating Ajax. And I can show you how Ajax works at a high level. So normally if I click on, raindrops on roses and all things, you see an entire request response cycle. You see lots of things going on here. And if I click on this, I go up to here, the very first page is a bunch of HTML that came out, and then the rest of it is like the bootstrap, etc., that was loaded by that page. So you have to kind of scroll back up. But now I'm going to clear this. I'll go back to all things. So that was one page with lots of sort of derivative stuff. But what we're going to do in this is when we hit this favorite button, we're not going to see a full screen refresh. We've got some JavaScript code in here that's going to make this, when I click on it, it's going to make it filled in. But it's also going to have to update something in the database so that it remembers that this is one of my favorite things for the logged in user. So I'm going to hit it, and you see that I hit this favorite, and that called a view inside the server which updated the state. And now if I refresh the whole page, it's going to show it to me, and it's remembered this, right? So I refresh the entire favorite list. And if I add a new one, whiskers on kittens, this is just a normal bit of code that's not that different. Sound of music. So like this one I've got a favorite, this one I don't have a favorite, right? I don't have that favorited. But Ajax is the way that we can it's just JavaScript and jQuery that's updating the UI, but we can change data on the server by just hitting a URL, in this case with a post request. So if we look at this, it actually sent a post request. If you recall, we're not supposed to change the server state on a GET request. So this is, to not be tacky, we're going to send a post request. And again, if you see this in the source, which we will, you don't want a spider to go down these GET requests. They'll see these URLs in the JavaScript, and we just hope, and they won't do it because they see it's a post request. So so if I hit refresh now, the data has been updated. So if I take a quick look at the admin user interface, admin, and I look at favs, this is my many to many. Well, let me just stay here, right? So this means that the user DJ4E likes raindrops, and so if I do a refresh here, so that means that me, the logged in user, DJ4E, likes this. Now, if I say I would also like whiskered on kittens, it's going to update the database, see there? And then if I come over here, I can hit refresh, and you see that DJ4E likes raindrops. And it's just a many-to-many table with an outward connection to raindrops on roses and another outward connection to the user DJ4E. Now I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete this from within the administration. Now this is exactly what the undelete button does. Now, the state of the system doesn't know that I deleted this in the background, but if I hit refresh, you see it now knows that it's deleted, and because it actually went and it queried all those tables, and there was really only one favorite. Okay? So let's take a look at the way this kind of comes together. We will eventually get back to all this JavaScript. So let's start with the models. The model, yeah. So thing, of course, has some title, like a lot of things, some text. We have a foreign key into owner because we want to be able to mark these things as belonging to somebody. This owner right here indicates who owns it, i.e. who will get the edit and delete, just like everything we've done that does that. Favorites is the new bit we're adding. And so we're basically saying, okay, we're going to, so this foreign key is a one-to-many, right? Because that's one user to many things. But this is the many-to-many. And this is also to auth user. Normally many-to-many is three tables, the kind of the left table, the right table, and the middle table. Well, in this case, we got the one table, but the right table, as it were, is the user model itself. And that's okay, because the user model is a table, and all we're doing with settings.auth user model is knowing what table that is. And of course, the created at and updated at in the title, that does. So this is our through model, and of course, when you're in the middle of a foreign key, you effectively have a foreign key to the left and a foreign key to the right. And so this is like, we have a foreign key back to thing, and that's a one-to-many relationship, and then we have a foreign key to the users, and that's a one-to-many relationship. In this case, the onDelete models equals cascade means if a thing is deleted and there's a fav row that references the thing, the fav rows that reference the thing will be deleted. And the same is true for if a user gets deleted, all the fav rows except. So either side, either the left or the right of this, we could, if one of those records goes, the corresponding records in fav will be deleted. And you can either delete things or you can delete users, and the fav rows are sort of automatically maintained. Now the one thing we're doing here is a little different than what we did in the comments one, is we've added this unique together. And that simply means that you can't insert more than one combination of a thing and a user. So it's not like you can favorite it a lot. If you keep hitting favorite, there's only one row. If there's a row in here that exists, i.e. right here, if this row exists and it connects the two, then it's favorited. So in the other examples, you'll notice that we modeled something at this connection. This is really a pure many-to-many. And this unique together basically says the only data that matters is the actual connection between thing and user. And this is just kind of a little fancy way to make it so that the admin user interface looks really cool. Right? DJ4E likes whiskers. That's what you're doing with these string classes. Okay? So, of course, you'll do your migrations when you get that. That's already taken care of. Let's take a look at a couple of things. Let's just start with urls.py. Make it a little smaller so it sort of fits better, a little wider. There we go. So this looks very similar to a lot of things that we've done. We've got a main view, we got a detail view, we got a create view, delete view. So those are all sort of, we've talked about those before and we've used those. This is the new thing here. And so this is the URL that we're going to hit if we're going to do a favorite or an unfavorite, and it is the primary key of the thing. And that's why I name this thing/thing primary key. I might want to even call that thing PK, and then favorite, right? And then that's going to call the add favorite view, And of course, this thing favorite is just a way to reference it in templates and in views. And the same thing for unfavorite. So we've got a little tiny add favorite view and a delete favorite view. And in terms of this, the only real code that we're going to change from previous examples is the list view, because the list view has to be augmented to actually show the little asterisks, and the list template has got to be augmented. As a matter of fact, the most complex bit of this is the list view, and these two have got to be added as well. So let's take a quick look at the views. Let me go ahead and cd templates / favs. So let's start with our list view. Okay, and come on, go a little larger. There we go. Here's our list view, and let's take a look at our list view. So the first thing is, because of that owner field, right, I am going to import the owner detail view, owner list view, and owner create view. And so I've got that, and actually I'm importing it from a different project. That's okay. This owner.py is in the myarts, but you might have it also locally. It'd be owner.py. So again, the whole idea here is that the owner field in the models, vi models.py, this owner field is managed, like in many of these, by us creating my /myarts owner. And basically we're creating this owner list view, the owner detail view, owner create view, and if you recall from these are the places where we've kind of overridden the original automatic create view, automatic update view, which we've used for lots of things, except when we're creating it, we've got to put the request user in right before we split the save into two pieces, and then we half save it, then we set the owner field, then we finish the saving, and then the update view and the delete view is more about the query set, and it basically says, I'm not going to let you retrieve this for update. That's what query set is. I'm not going to let you retrieve this for update unless you own it. And so that's what this is basically saying, is I'm going to also filter these based on the owner must be equal to the current logged in user. And this code right here, is exactly the same for delete. So what we're doing is loading the record prior to delete, and we're saying, look, if you don't own it, I'm not going to load it, which means you can't delete it because it gets a 404 not found. And so again, that's in the delete view and the update view, right? That's all here because it's going to do a get or 404, right? And so in there, it does a get 404. Again, this particular one, we got to do our own get or 404. And inside delete view and update view, it's going to do a get or 404, get object or 404. And then this code right here, if it's like ID equals primary key and owner equals self.request user, the answer is no, and so this is going to blow up, this delete view and update view. Now, that's just a review of stuff we've been doing for a couple of examples, so I'm not going to go into super great detail. So what I want to do is I want to show you thing list view. Now actually it does owner list view, but if you go back and look at owner list view, it doesn't really do anything other than the base one. But so it's basically looks like most of these, except what we've done is we've overridden the get request. So we're overriding the get request. And some of this is the stuff that's part of the default, meaning it always would go get thing list objects.all, and it would always pass into the template thing list. And if you take a look at the template, right, what it does is it checks to see if there's a thing list, then it loops through it, and then it prints all this stuff out. And literally, a lot of this is very similar to everything we've done with previous sample code, right? But the problem is we need to get the data so that we can know the starting value, whether these are supposed to be filled in or not, right? And so what we do is we say, okay, and we only gonna do that if they're authenticated, because if we're not logged in, if I log out, I don't have any favorites. I can't unfavorite thing, I can't favorite things because I'm not logged in. And so I don't do this, right? So if the user's authenticated, then I'm going to do this. And it also means that in the template, all of this stuff, this is the favorite code, only happens and only shows if the user's authenticated. So I'll log in, DJ4E, log in, and now it's actually pulling this extra data. And so here we are in views. If the user's authenticated, let's go to the current logged in user and get a list of their favorite things, but only the ID field. Now, this would give you a list of objects, and each object would be ID:1, ID:2, ID:3. And so we use a bit of list comprehension so that I end up with a favorites that's just a list of the IDs of the things for which I have a favorite. So in this case, if this is like thing 1, and this is thing 4. And so in this list, that list will be just 4 because 4 is favorited and 1 is not. So I might have 50 of these, and you might only have 2 of them favorited. And when it's all said and done, this favorites list, if you printed it out, okay, let's print it out. Print favorites. Print that out, and you will see, let me hit refresh here, and then go over to my run server, and it's a list with the number 4 in it. So 4 is a favorite and 1 is not a favorite. If I hit this and then I hit refresh and I look at this print, you'll see that 4 and 1 are my favorites, right? And then if I unfavorite 4 and I hit refresh, you will see that 1 is the favorite, okay? Now that then drives into that, and that just is passed right here into the template, yeah? And then we have this new stuff in the template. Now we're in the middle of looping through all the things, which this is the loop that goes through all those things. But here we are in the middle if the user is authenticated. And so we basically have some code. Anchor tag href equals # is our key that says don't actually go anywhere. And the onClick is the method, and that's going to call some JavaScript. And it's going to call as a parameter, see I got a single quote here, the URL for the thing unfavorite of thing ID. And I'm also passing thing ID as a parameter. So if you do a quick inspect element right here, inspect element, you see that onClick favPost, this is a URL to hit, and that's the ID. So I'm passing those in as parameters and then return false. We'll go through that JavaScript in a second. And I also give this an ID so that I can reference it down in that function that I'm going to build in a second. So that's here, ID equals favorite. Now, I need to decide whether or not to show which of these two to show. So it turns out that there's actually 2 stars. And what I'm really doing is I'm showing 1 star or the other. You don't notice that, but if you look down here, there are actually 2 stars. Here's 1 star, and here's the other star. So there's actually, I can see if I can convince it. If I can convince the, where is, oh, it's got to be here, display none. If I can change this to be display inline, you'll see that there's really 2 stars. And all I'm doing, now this is not going to be much, this is not going to work. I don't know how well this is going to work because I manually unhit it, but there's actually 2 stars, right? But what happens is that I hide the star that's filled and show the star that's filled appropriate. So let me refresh to get it so that but there's 2 stars there. One is hidden and one is not. So it turns out that what this is this is 2 bits of making a star, and all I'm doing is I'm stacking 2 stars. I'm stacking an orange star on top of a blue outline star. And then what I'm doing it twice. So that's a link. But what I'm doing is if the current thing is in the favorite list, remember I did that, then I'm going to add a style equals display none. And if, in this case, that one's, if it's not in the favorite list, I'm going to hide this one, right? This is the unfavorite, and this is the favorite. And if it's in favorites, I'm going to hide the favorite. So if it's already a favorite, I'm going to show the empty star that's got an unfavorite link. Show empty star. Show a full star with an unfavorite link underneath it. My mind gets all messed up on this. And then if it is in favorites, show a filled in star with an unfavorite. Yeah. Yeah. If it's not in favorites. Oh, right. I got, it's almost a double negative, right? If it's not in favorites, hide it. So this kind of flips, but okay. So this is an empty star that'll, if you click on it, favorites it, and this is a filled in star that if you click on it, unfavorites it. Okay? So let's take a look at this. Now then there's the tricky bit. The tricky bit is that when you click on the one that you can see, and in this case the one I can see is this one, right? So I'm here, I can see this one. So it's going to click on fav post, passing in fav's thing unfavorite, where that is the key of the thing. Here's the whole thing, right? And passing in that number. We'll see what that's for in a sec. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to the JavaScript that handles this. Okay, so now we got this function fav post, and you don't have to modify this. So this is the URL that we're going to post to. We're actually going to send no data to it, and then thing ID is our, so we can have a number. So this fetch is built into the browser. You may have to do what's called a polyfill for fetch if you have a really old browser, but we're not. And so those are called polyfills, things to say like, oh, this is Internet Explorer 10 or whatever, and I need X. So fetch basically takes the URL and then a object with method post, yada yada. You can go look all this up. You don't have to worry too much about it. Content type, and I'm not sending any data. And so this is a post with 0 data. And then the way this works is this fetch function starts the fetch, but then it delays it because it could take a long time to go across the internet, go through the server, and come back. And then what it does is it comes back and then calls this function when the response returns back to the browser. So this is the browser talking to the server, and then you split your code into 2 parts. The part that gets it started, and then the part that in effect asynchronously reacts to the finished. So that's why I'm saying log finished. So you see, oh, it finished. And then the next thing I do is I go grab those 2 little stars and I flip them. I hide them. If they're visible, I hide them. And if they're hidden, I make them visible. So unfavorite star thing ID, which means it comes back to this little guy here, and it just toggles them. So when I do this, it's actually hiding one and showing the other, hiding one and showing the other. I could have done this differently, but that's really what's going on. And you can see the display none flipping back and forth down here as I flip it. And of course, it's also changing it in the server with the post request. So if I sit here and I look at the network, and I go unfavorite, favorite, unfavorite, favorite. And that's because as I'm showing it and hiding it, it's also toggling what happens when I click on it. If this is shown, then it's going to call unfavorite. Oh, this is now shown, it's going to call favorite. So the empty star is going to call favorite, and the filled in star is going to call unfavorite. Pretty cool, huh? I mean, you could probably come up with some better HTML, and so again, if you look at the console, this is quite nice. I got some debugging here, right? Favorite, favorite, finished. So that's actually going on here after the network shows when they start. Now the finish so fast it's hardly whatever, but then this shows when it finished. Okay, and so that's how you debug this. Now you might have problems on your own code when you're doing stuff like this. Okay, but in this you just don't have to change much. So that is probably the hardest part of this. But then the last thing that we've got to do is we've got to go into the views.py and handle these posts to favs, thing, favorite, finished, right? So we got to hit the posts. So if you take a look at URLs, I'm probably going to need models. Keep models up. URLs.py. So this is the routes. So it's really simple. Remember, this thing is the primary key of the thing ID, not the favorite ID. Favorite does have an ID, but we're not really using it. We're using the combination of the thing ID and the user ID, basically, as the index in the favorite. So we go find favorite view. It's down near the bottom. And so, if you recall, most forms we require CSRF, and there we could have put the CSRF in here, but it was a lot simpler to just make it CSRF exempt. You kind of have to decide on security whether or not it's okay. Like, I could write a code injection that would favorite a bunch of books for you. Is that really that dangerous? But you could make this more secure. But what I did is I made it CSRF exempt. Okay, and so if you go read to Stack Overflow, you have to import these things and then add this little thing that basically says, hey, we're not going to blow up CSRF. If you don't, these things will get 403s, I think, which is not allowed, but you don't want that. And then after that, this looks like pretty much any other thing. It's a login required mixin, which basically means a session has to be established. We're not really caring it. We're just extending a normal view. It turns out there's no UI to this. If you look at the response is empty. But that's okay because the damage has been done in the server as a result of the post. So we got a post method we're overriding from view, and we're taking self and request, which we always get, and PK, of course, which is the second number, right? I guess it's in URLs, right? PK is whatever this second number is. It's that parameter. And we get PK as the parameter comeback views. There we are. Print some stuff out. I'm going to load the thing that corresponds to the PK or blow up with a 404, right? So you can't just guess. I can't just say, you know, if I pick a PK that doesn't exist, nothing happens. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to load the old favorite. I'm going to create a new favorite, and I'm going to put to the left and the right the user value of favorite, right? So we're setting these two parameters right here. Setting thing and user. So thing is being set to the current thing we just loaded, which is got a primary key. And the user is the current logged in user. Now, we're going to save it, but we're going to do it in the try except block because what if there's already one there? And if you recall, you can't, because of unique together, you can't save the same combination of thing and user twice. And there's other ways I could have done this that are a little more complex, but I kept it simple. I just did a try and said it's okay if it blows up. That means it's already there. Because I don't let you really hit the favorite twice, but if you somehow could like click on this, if I could do an inspect element, and okay, and like so we're unfavorited. But I could unfavorite twice, right? All I'd have to do is somehow convince myself to grab this URL. It's not favorited, and you think, oh, don't do that. Well, the user can always like hand put this URL in. I just unfavorited it. What did I do wrong? Oh, too many favs. Come back. That's a second unfavorite. Well, I don't know why that blew up. Well, let's stop playing with that. Let's see. Did it complain in my thing? Thing one unfavorite. Favs thing. Oh, I know why. Duh. I'm doing a GET request. There is no GET request. Come back. Yeah, you can't always put it in a browser and make it work. Teach me a lesson, right? There's no def GET. And I can make it work, but that's a GET request. And so it's like, sorry, there ain't even a GET request here. Okay, so high level, we get the thing's primary key, we load the thing, we create a link, we create an object to put into fav with the two pieces, and we try to save it and don't really care if we've inadvertently double saved it because our UI is sort of keeping us from causing that to happen. Okay? So that's the favorite. The delete favorite is even easier. Right? So in delete favorite, we're CSRF exempt. we have to be logged in, because if you're not logged in, then request user is going to blow up. This line's going to blow up because request user is not necessarily set if you don't have login required. So that's why we drop login required mix in right here. And then we load up the old thing. And that's because we need to put it in this effect filter. So this is like a where clause in SQL. Fav objects get user equals the current logged in user, and thing equals T. T was the primary key of that thing. So if we can get it, then we delete it. Now, if again somebody manually found their way to the unfavorite button, even though we've hit it cleverly, they could still find their way, or a web browser might find its way. We're like, okay, we tried to delete it, it's not there, there's nothing bad, we'll just kind of fav not, it does not exist, and we're going to pass. And then we return an HTTP response, which is, in effect, emptiness. So when we come here, go to the network, refresh, clear everything, unclear it, right, there is nothing there. So we returned an HTTP response, but the most important thing is that we sent back a 200. So this, implicit when you're doing this is there is a 200 going back. And so it is successful. Okay? And so I think that this is pretty much all I have to cover on this, how to build a favorites. The quick way to test this is you should be able to turn these things on and off and watch the network tab. And then if you hit refresh, these two things, the state of these should be the same, meaning that you've properly recorded them in the database. So when I had it breaking, I would hide it, and then I would refresh it, and the little orange star would come back. So I hope this was helpful to you. A helpful little walkthrough going through the favorite sample code. Cheers.